We are the Casual Gamers Project. Welcome to part 3 of our Resident Evil podcast special. My name is Diggs. I'm joined by my fellow casual gamers, Peter, Stevo and Veddy.
Howdy.
So, on our previous episode, we covered the Resident Evil games that were released on the 128-bit consoles, such as Code Veronica, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 4. If you haven't already checked that episode out, you can find it on our Spotify, Podbean and YouTube channels. All can be found under the title Casual Gamers Project. If you like what you hear, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. So fellas, we left the discussion on Resident Evil 4, so I think it makes sense to move on from there onto the next RE game in the timeline's Resident Evil 5. So what's your first take on Resident Evil 5 after playing? Yeah.
Brings to mind.
It's like when Wesker whipped his ass that bad. He was like, right, so you need to give me TRT, ABC, EFG, whatever you've got. I'm traumatized. You know, I feel like I need to punch a boulder. I don't know why. It might come in handy at some point in life, but yeah.
I just have this vision in my head of Chris, you know, to the Rocky team, training, getting ripped, punching boulders.
Ejected himself and crying in the locker room.
His hair falling out.
Having a Jill sandwich.
Brilliant.
Talk about venting your anger.
Yeah. So like Resident Evil 5, it was such a massive difference. I mean, they took the success of Resident Evil 4, and what I believe anyway is that they went back to bring it back more into the Resident Evil kind of, like tied it back to the Resident Evil lore, because Umbrella was back in at this time, and so was the likes of Wesker, and it was back to BOWs again, really, when you think about it. And it's, you know, the one thing that I was thinking about this during the week, and I was saying to myself, right, I was going to go into this episode and say, no, not for me, but actually when I think about it, I really enjoyed that game, and I think it is really a good game. The only thing that I don't like about it is that they changed it to a daytime setting, which, you know, when you think of survival horror, you think of like nighttime, like horror movies. Yeah. It's all nighttime. I just thought it was a little bit of a strange choice, if I'm honest, and that was my only gripe really with it, was that, you know. And the other thing was they didn't modernize the controls again, because this game came out in 2009, and you still had to stop and shoot, whereas Dead Space had come out in 2008 and already allowed free movement, you know, move while shooting. And I remember at the time, like, a lot of people that they were not happy about that, you know. They were like, oh, this is so, like, bad, you know, bring it to modern.
Gears of War was out by then, wasn't it?
Yes, it was definitely out by then, yeah.
Yeah, and, like, you had that, like, people were bloody doing somersaults into, like, chainsaw shots and stuff in that game, you know.
Yeah, I just remember, like, a lot of people, you know, I remember being part of a forum, a gaming forum, and, like, most people weren't really into Resident Evil at the time, but it was getting big hype up because, you know, aesthetically it was kind of hitting that Call of Duty audience with the visuals, and they were really eager. Like, there was a big hype up, but then when the demo came out that time and they played it, nope, not for me. You have to stand still and shoot. Which, you know, I can agree that it's a bit backward with that.
I think Resident Evil 5 was following off of that trend, because at that time, as we know, like, Call of Duty was massive, and literally every other game and every other genre literally wanted a piece of that. So so they all kind of tried to shift the focus, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, but you know, it's whatever way it, you know, it obviously, because it proved the fact, and even myself, like, I've been doing my own bits and pieces on the side, like doing videos and that, but I found by doing that, looking into the research, action games do sell in far higher numbers than the likes of, you know, mainstream survival horror games, and it proved it, because the likes of Resident Evil 5, even by today's standards, is still one of the best selling games Capcom's ever made. When you think, and it's nowhere near the best Resident Evil, but again, it's still one of the highest grossing games, and for that reason alone.
I agree with you. that it's not one of the best Resident Evil games because it kind of, even though 4 kind of like went away from the traditional Resident Evil style, and 5 kind of took the same gameplay mechanics as 4,
kind of upped the action a wee bit more, probably.
Yeah, it did. It just went even more action based.
Yeah.
And, the introduction to co-op, I was a bit ticked off of that. Like, it's nice to play games with your mates and all that, but I always find survival horror works better if you're
on your own.
That's the whole point of it. Feeling isolated on your own, nobody to help you.
Atmospheric, the whole lot.
And seeing that obviously you touched on something I wanted to bring up there when you were talking about obviously the daytime setting. I did think one thing that did pretty well in Resident Evil 5, that when you went in from a very bright set to a dark set, there was that moment where you couldn't see.
Yeah.
You couldn't see what was there.
Yeah, it was like
adjust.
Yeah, it was like your eyes in real life adjusting. Yeah. I give them props for that. Yeah, they done a great job on the lighting.
Yeah, because when you would walk in a room and you would hear something,
exactly.
See what's going on.
I definitely agree with you. Like, visually, the game was very, very good. And as you said, things with the controls backwards are staying the same. Were they afraid of change, or did they think that actually people wanted it to stay the same? I don't know. Like, everybody wanted it to change.
Yeah.
I think it was there's a formula for Resident Evil, and it's that kind of stop and shoot. I mean the old school Resident Evil.
The old ones, yeah.
And I think they just wanted to keep that in. I think just to be, well, here's the downside to this survival horror or horror action, whatever it's called, that stand still and shoot and risk get hit from either side or I think that's kind of, I think they thought it added a wee bit more to the game.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the story of the game. So it takes place 10 years after Resident 4, and they've immediately brought back ties to the previous Resident Evil game. So, because when you think of the opening cinematic, so Chris and Jill had joined the BSAA at this point, and they went to the Spencer estate, and they came across Albert Wesker, right? I'm remembering this correct. There was a big kind of fist fight, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And Jill sacrificed herself, jumping out the window and dragging Wesker with her, so she's presumed dead in this game. So in the meantime, Chris is deployed to Africa because there's a guy called, is it Ricardo Irving or something like that?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. There's talk of him selling an unknown BOW, isn't it, on the black market in Africa?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically the premise of the story. And that's one thing I will say about this game. I actually thought the story in this game was much better than 4. Because I found 4 was like, Salazar, and that was a bit, really, when you think about it. Sadler. Wait, am I getting them right? Salazar's the midget.
Yeah.
Like, he's a crazy kind of like villain. Yeah. Whereas I thought 5 had a much kind of darker tone to it when you think about it,
It did in many respects, yeah.
Yeah, because you have all those guys that, illegal arms dealers that pretty much is real life. You get that going on in real life. And so it did sort of hit more the home in that sort of sense. I think storyline wise, you could sort of, like, you're not going to really know too many Spanish midgets, but you're reading the news. And, like,
he's a famous one there.
Yeah, I know. He's called Poco. But, you know what I mean? You see, like, obviously you read about, there was even that film, what was it, Dogs of War or whatever. It was
yeah, I think I know the one you're talking about.
And it's like, even when you look at that, it's all like meeting up with guys, especially to see them in that movie. It's like meeting up with guys in the African government. They're selling them guns.
Is that the one with Jonah Hill?
Yes.
Yeah, War Dogs, I think it's
War
called.
Dogs, yes, because
it's great.
That's immediately what I thought about. Like,
funny.
When I played it years later again, it was like,
yeah.
This, it did have certain beats of like what could possibly happen, which did make the story interesting. Plus, I like the fact as well that they did have another character, a new character in Sheva, right? That was, because we all know what Chris is about, so you sort of need to have the new element in there to sort of intrigue the returning fans, I think, whereas the new people are going to be like, oh, who's this guy? He's kind of big, but whereas when you're a returning fan, it's good to have something new to sort of get to learn about.
Yeah, and I'm correct in saying that you could play Sheva, right? You didn't, she wasn't just secondary in single player. You could play as her.
You could choose her,
the game first, before you could play her.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, if you're starting the game up, you have a choice between.
Yeah, a choice, yeah.
I couldn't remember if you could or not, but yeah, like, what about you, Peter, in terms of the story? What did you think of it? Or?
Yeah, I remember like when even first going back to seeing early trailers of the game. I remember I was at college at the time, and I remember getting really excited by it because it did have that dark, gritty tone to it. But although at the same time, I didn't think that it was going to be as action focused. But then obviously, like previous games, I think it did go through quite a few changes during its development because Chris obviously wasn't as big. I remember in those trailers compared to what he ended up being in the game. Now, in saying that, yeah, I was excited to get it. I couldn't wait to play it. Like, and in fairness, like I did enjoy the game overall. Even though it's not considered to be the best one, when I got into it, because again, you're familiar with the characters. That's for me, that's the thing. Like with Chris and the whole lot, like you're always going to want to, be intrigued and to kind of venture more into it. And I thought it was good. I actually enjoyed it for what it was, but it was tough in areas, especially if you played it on harder difficulties. With some areas in that game was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I did like the story. The one thing I found, because it did expand on Resident Evil 4 with the action elements, if anything, it was definitely even a lot more cinematic at the time. It was for me, it was one of the best looking games on the PlayStation at that time. But it definitely felt more movie like. It definitely had more of a movie style quality to it. So it did, and like the voice acting in terms of the story.
I was just about to say that.
Even with your man Roger Craig Smith that done the voice of Chris, he also did Batman in Arkham Origins, and I was only earlier on he done voiceovers for other games on the PS2 like the Incredible Hulk and stuff like that. So they obviously had a good pedigree of voice actors, playing through it, and it was definitely a massive step up in terms of that quality. But even the action scenes as well, like so many explosions and just the level of detail was pretty cool. Like there was some really cool elements in the game, but there was also some very frustrating ones. But once you finished it, and it was interesting. But then, like we were saying at the start, it does get silly then at certain points, like punching boulders and stuff that just gets a bit ridiculous. Like so, for me,
Wesker was ridiculous in it too.
Yeah, that for me that was just the turning point when I was like, no, this is way too over the top. Yeah, that kind of way.
We touched on it in the last one when I was saying like the last proper portrayal for Wesker. That you actually see him in the game as opposed to just like on a phone was when he fought Chris. Because when we got Wesker in Resident Evil 5, he might as well have been a metahuman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was able to like go super fast, dodge bullets like he was Neo from the Matrix.
That was very much what he was based on, wasn't it? The glasses, the long
although I find in saying that, because especially with the later DLCs, that was one thing I did like about it was the fact that some of the DLCs now they tried to use not only the co-op elements, but they tried to use like deathmatch elements like you see in every other bloody game that was coming out at the time, where they tried to do like verses and stuff, and that part was terrible. But because again, with being able to not move, you had to literally wait and allow someone to freaking stand in front of you to let you shoot them. Like it was impossible. Like I don't know how they even thought it would work. But aside from that, some of the other ones, you remember the Lost in Nightmares one where you're exploring and that the Spencer estate and stuff like that. But it went more in depth into the fight scene at Wesker in that DLC. You got to see the full version of it, or most of it anyway, because you got to experience it like fighting Wesker in the room, trying to beat him down and stuff. But I loved that part of it because it was the action in that was phenomenal. Like the fight scenes and the choreography basically. The hand-to-hand combat and the different styles. It was a level above for what many games I would have seen at that time. And let's just say in some ways you might consider it to be one of the best Resident Evils, which is perfectly fine, and it's a good case study, like an argument, but it definitely leveled up in terms of certain other elements, like with those type of say the action and certain things. It definitely was leaps and bounds amongst other games out there, in fairness.
Yeah. What about you, Steve-O? What do you think of the story in 5?
I actually enjoyed it, and just listening to what you just said, and even yourself, Dave, was BSAA, right? It kind of filled in the gaps of who they are and what they're about more so in this one. Was the references made, I think there was in 4, but was the references made in previous ones before that, in any of the book?
I'm actually not sure. Peter, you're the knowledge man.
There was certain references, because Resident Evil 5 is actually the first game where you get to see in real time, like in a certain portion of the game later on in the game, they actually find a cave and it has these plants, and they find out that it's that's the main source of the original progenitor virus for the T virus.
Yeah. So the thing about the BSAA, I think this is the first game really where they were kind of like established, right?
Yeah.
They're introduced.
Yeah,
but then
you heard of them, but you didn't know much about it until to this game?
Yeah, so this game introduced also the company Tricell, which was like
Umbrella
it turns out
2.0.
yeah, and it turned out that they were funding the BSAA.
Yeah.
So basically they were keeping them, keeping the cards close to their chest and keeping their enemies close to
Yeah.
that kind of method. But that was the big revelation in the game, right? And then that was where Joanna Excella, she was the CEO of Tricell, but she was she was working with Wesco.
Yeah.
Talk to more.
Yeah, to basically bring about the apocalypse or something.
She could bring it about, all right.
She could, damn.
No, but like as you were saying, Diggs, it was quite the revelation when you realised that basically they were being the carrot on the stick for the BSAA. They were saying, "Oh yeah, just come here." Kind of like if they're looking there, they're not looking over here, sort of thing. So they were sort of cherry picking what to give the BSAA their main business.
Yeah, they had them on a leash basically. Yeah,
Basically,
and then inside. Sorry, just before you move or you start, Steve, I was just going to say about the hooded figure in the game. That was the whole point of the game. Who's the person in the hooded clothing? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
The big
None of us
revelation
were
of
too
that.
sure. Like we all had our own opinions, but who is? And then obviously that's when it does happen. You're like, oh right,
Yeah, the fact that your ex-partner Jill,
Yeah.
and she's being controlled by a freaking what was the thing on her chest again?
I was going to say breast implant, but it's it's the wrong choice of words.
Well, they were technically implanted.
A breastplate implant maybe because it's on the breastplate.
Yeah.
Total Recall. I wish I
Yeah.
got 3 hands.
Okay.
You're right. Brilliant.
Come on, what are we doing? I haven't got enough hands. No. But like
Jeez.
I even thought it was very interesting with her the choice of mask. They went with the plague mask, which was very
Yes.
intriguing.
Yeah. I was
Yeah,
going to
I
bring
remember
that
that,
up
yeah,
as
yeah.
well. I was like, it's so creepy looking, They're so good at doing that in the Resident Evil
It
games.
kind of puts you off or guess and say who actually is it. Do that kind of
It kind of like it almost became sort of like an iconic thing, wasn't it? Because it was almost like the Chainsaw Man with the sack over his head.
Yeah.
It was always like it makes you wonder who the hell is under that, I thought it was pretty cool, But then that's another gripe I have with the game. That whole thing, the revelation that it's actually Jill and she's being controlled by Wes because of this implant, and you find out that like she's aware, she's fully aware of everything she's doing, like fighting Chris and everything, but she just couldn't stop herself because she was under
couldn't
his
control it,
control, But yeah.
But it was like even that fight when you fight her as well. Like it's pretty good when you listen to the dialogue she's saying at certain points, especially when you're down her. I think she tells him to run at some points as well. Like it's like the mask slips for a second. She gets gets a hand on the wheel for a second before the implant kicks back in.
Yeah, that was actually a tough fight.
It was.
Remember that? Like,
It was, yeah.
because there was you had to do so many attempts, wasn't it, to rip
Yeah.
it off her chest, and it was all quick time button
Yeah,
mashing.
and
Should
sometimes
that, like,
sometimes it was just
diamond
pure luck as well.
Yeah.
Well, you
That's-
shoot it first before you could actually try to go over to grab it off her chest, and that to me taught that a terrible aim.
No, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong thing.
Yeah. So yeah, like it was a good. I thought it was a good fight, but the one thing I wanted to mention next was the return of QuickTime. Now there was quite a few of them in this game as well, but I didn't think they were as bad as.
Yeah, they weren't as frustrating as 4. There were certain remember parts with, especially with the likes of
frustrating
Krauser and
is the
stuff
right
like
word,
that. Yeah, they were just they drive you crazy.
Oh, that was,
There was a bit
I'm not
more
even going back
polish
to
to
that.
them. There was a bit more polish to them. They
Oh,
were
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Whereas when you played it in 4, you sort of knew you were coming into a quick time event because, as you said, it went letterboxed in the digs, or there was something.
Yeah,
happening
there was.
anyway.
Yeah.
So you knew it was coming up. Whereas when you played it in 5, I don't think it did that. You sort of had to be on your toes a wee bit, with them as well.
Yeah, it would just happened randomly, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. I always remember that first time, the villagers knocked the boulder after you, bored by hail.
Yeah.
So how about we move on to the final act in the game, the big fight with Wesker. It was I felt like the game. So Resident Evil 5, it was a much darker story, and right up until that point, I didn't feel like it was too over the top. But then it just freaking crazy. Crazy.
The rail.
Yeah.
Somebody just was like, "Can I do whatever I want?" Yeah. Sure. And an
Yeah.
airplane, volcano. Yeah,
Volcano.
volcano's good. He said, "Okay, the volcano. Yeah, we're doing a volcano, boys." It's like it was nuts. I felt, especially when you're looking at the end fight, and like for me, that really disappointed me because to me, like every like Avengers, right? Your main villain's Thanos. You're building up to this big conflict with Thanos, right? And the way I felt it did Wesker so bad in this, like from the Neo ripoff to the fast, janky stuff, and then the way that went, it was just you had a brilliant villain there and you ruined it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it was
like-
good up and just to that point for me.
Yeah, like I think, well, like when you think of Wesker was definitely one of the most formidable kind of like opponents, or like how would you call it, the type of characters, like bad guys, you could say, in games. And yeah, they ruined his character by the way they portrayed him. Then, especially towards the end of 5, yeah,
It
which
was
is a
like,
pity.
It's the thing about Wesker was you could have kept that for so many games down the line.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
almost like Inspector Gadget, the Claw. You know what I mean? Pulling. I know he was though. Ada, the Claw. I'm next to Gadget. You know, but it's like he's sitting on the phone to Ada and he's like, "Did you get the sample?" And she's like, "Yeah, I got it." So you can see, like, I would have liked to have seen more of that where he's building up to something. You know,
Yeah.
because that's your Thanos moment, really.
Yeah.
He's getting all his pieces on the board before he starts to make his move. And I felt like we went from Resident Evil 4, I've seen a glimpse of that, to straight into 5, and then I felt like they could have stretched
Yeah.
that out a bit longer. You know?
Yeah, it felt like that Wesker's character, his demise was somewhat rushed in that game, because it's only until the 5th game that you realise that he has to take these injections to maintain his, his
Strength, yeah.
his strength and the
Superhuman
whole lot.
strength,
So with the likes of the being infected with that strain of the T virus or whatever it is that makes him, that gives him those superhuman powers. And you didn't realise that or even know anything about that up until Resident Evil 5. There was no inkling or any idea of it as well. So it just it just felt rushed in terms of, it's just like, no, just get it out there.
Yeah. Like they could have dragged that on for ages. You could have had it that, he starts to age rapidly and he's fighting. It's time, and then his hands pushed. Or you could have done loads of different.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go down the pitch of my own Resident Evil.
Yeah.
The first time you fight him, do like a kind of like you're in the open and say there's is it flashlights and then there's rocket launchers, then you shoot one and he grabs the rocket.
Yeah.
What do you think of that part of it?
I thought it was just silly.
Yeah.
I thought so myself. I just
Generally,
want an opinion, but
I think
just like
any
it's
of
a
these
waste.
parts, any of these fights with West.
I don't know,
You
was it
just
the case that they were trying to make the game longer, more that you're not going to complete it actually in a few hours. I'm not too sure, but saying that some of the fight scenes, boss fights, stupid.
Yeah.
While sorry,
Go ahead.
yeah, while like I do consider, like, I don't consider Resident Evil 5 to be like the worst game ever. It's definitely not the best Resident Evil game, but I do admit, and I think me and you, Dick, we did have this discussion many times where we considered the DLC, The Lost and Nightmares, to probably be one of the best parts of it, because it was the one section of the game that did try to retrieve its roots back to more horror. And even the fact is that you could use that trick, the way you could change the camera perspective, where it go back into like the fixed camera. That was really cool. So it was.
Yeah, it's crazy to think like that.
Because I remember you found that out, because I didn't know about that at the time, and then you were messing
went
around
to
one
the
day and you
door.
found it. Yeah.
Yeah, you went to the front door. I tried to do. Do you remember in the original Resident Evil, you went to the front door, the dogs, the CGI cinematic with the dog? I just wanted to see what happened, and then I done it a few times, and suddenly the camera angles changed.
Camera changed,
And I
yeah.
was like, oh shit!
Yeah.
This is what a throwback to RE1. But you're right about that. That DLC, and I think we'll continue on the normal story for now, but we'll definitely visit that DLC, Lost and Nightmares, further on in this episode, because I wanted to talk about the enemy in this game. And do you remember, you're not playing the game a very long time before you come to that part in the village where the executioner is. Remember him?
Yeah.
He was mean as.
I thought he was a cool character. I thought he was definitely. I thought he was a really cool character.
Like he had the black bag over his head, like some sort of like bag over his head, right?
Yeah.
But his body had nails hammered in it all around his body.
For me, he was like he was like Resident Evil's version of Pyramid Head. That's what
you're right. Absolutely, yeah.
Just the build of him and everything, he just gave me that vibe. But it took me ages to figure out that you could shoot the power terminals to come down to give you to buy you a few seconds. But
I think he would have been a cool character to actually, like what they have done in like the remakes and stuff, to have him follow you throughout the game. I think that would have been cool.
Yeah. missed opportunity again, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And he was the fact that like you met him very early in the game,
Yeah.
you defeat him very early in the game. I was like, pity, But
You
Resident
could say
Evil
everything
4
else
all
and
over
after
again.
that, like boss fights just didn't live up to that. You know what I mean? Just the way
Yeah.
he was and the whole lot.
There was a few cool moments though. Like the one thing I do applaud Resident Evil 5 for, they did try to keep you moving forward in terms of location. Like you had
Yeah.
that bit in the
Yeah.
swamplands.
it's very
where you come
linear. Yeah.
It was very linear, and then you're on the jeep, and then you got all the guys, which looked like Ganado type zombie dude on the
Yeah.
bikes running up to you, and then you have the BSAA guys, reinforcements coming along.
Yeah.
It was. I felt like they did try to keep you sort of progressing forward,
yeah.
with the locations, like, and there was the bit with the mine as well. Don't you fight Wesker down in the mine too?
Yeah, I think that was the major issue with the game as well. And Resident Evil 4 did have some level of backtracking, especially early on in the game, which was cool.
Yeah,
and
in
you'd
the
find
village,
items that you
yeah.
could, But with Resident Evil 5, there was none of that, and I think that was, I think that was a major gripe. And and Resident Evil 6 had the same issue where you kept moving, and that was it, and there was no way going back. Like,
I remember,
So-
I remember saying that to you, Peter, when
Yeah.
we got it. I was like, oh, there's no backtracking. Like,
Yeah.
just A to B. And
Yeah.
That's it.
yeah.
Moving
So if you
along.
miss out on something, tough luck.
Yeah, so it's gone. You
Yeah.
have to play it again.
Yeah,
Do you remember the dogs in it?
yeah, they were
They
pain.
were pain. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
They were
Just
like
nightmare.
Las Plagas like dogs, weren't they?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
head.
The
Yeah, the
face
head
opened
split.
up, isn't it?
Yeah, the head split and they come out. But I just remember them being a nightmare to kill
They were
because they were
tough,
so
yeah.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were tough, man.
I hate them.
Took a lot of bullets.
Bullets,
Yeah,
yeah.
bullet sponges,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
I just think of say right. I know say you main control or main character Chris, and then say Sheva there with you. Obviously, say not all the time, but say Chris was critically injured, and they need Sheva to come over to give you like an injection to keep you going. What do you
Yeah.
think of that element of it? That you
Yeah,
somebody there to just keep you going.
Yeah, you a bit of a
If she didn't
the thing
reach you,
is,
you were dead.
But her AI was actually very good when you think about
Yeah.
it. Like, she was designed very well that, like, whatever you were aiming at, she'd take some of the, the fire as well.
Yeah.
I just thought, overall, it was good. And the one thing, the inventory. So they changed it from Resident Evil 4. You had the Itachi kit and the merchant.
Yeah.
Done away with both of those things and give you 9 inventory slots per character. So you essentially had 18 because you could swap back and forth.
yeah,
That was in 0 too, right?
yeah. It
Yeah.
was. Yeah,
Couldn't you get pouches though? Couldn't you get, like, if you were walking around, you could find like a attachment?
increase it?
Yeah, I think you could. Couldn't you
I don't
not?
remember, to be honest.
I think you could find like something to clip on your belt or something.
I think there
had more
was something.
slots.
I think that could give you an extra slot or two. I think there
Yeah.
was something.
Yeah.
And what did you think of that? Would you have preferred if they had kept the merchant in it and the Itachi case, or do you?
It's a cool mechanic if you're playing co-op with someone,
Yeah.
right? Because then you can go, here man, I have no ammo, and your mate will chuck you a few bullets, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're playing with the computer, it's an easy way to just offload
Yeah,
what you don't need to.
Yeah,
You know,
give
Yeah.
it to the other character. Yeah,
that's what you actually. That's what you spend most of your time doing. Yeah,
Yeah, but it took away the ability to, the way in 4 you could upgrade your firepower, your
Yeah.
reload times, and your weapon. It took that away, right? Because all you could get parts for your guns, right?
you could upgrade them. Yeah,
But it wasn't in the same way as 4. Or am I misunderstanding that?
Well, I think
Where
you
the
had to find the
firepower-
parts, wasn't it? And before you.
Aye,
could
but the
upgrade.
way you could upgrade your gun in increments in 4.
It was just in the chapter though, wasn't it? In between chapters, you could do it.
yeah.
Or
Only in
did
the
you
yeah.
just, or did you just buy new guns?
You could find that the majority of guns try play, but if you missed them, you had an opportunity later on then to buy them, like you said, Betty, at the end of the levels.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could,
I couldn't remember of that.
yeah,
Because I bought Resident Evil 5 off Steam there about a week ago, and I couldn't play it because some Windows Live problem. Now apparently they've patched that, but it was too late to get it. I wanted to play it, because I knew it would record would go around.
I only played this recently. 5, so
Yeah.
pretty fresh.
Yeah, I remember. The what were they called? The Genie was the name of the
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the tribe, wasn't it? You met
Yeah.
Instead of the
at
Ganado.
swamplands.
Yeah.
Instead of the
yeah.
Ganado. What was it? Ganado.
Ganados.
Ganados.
They,
Yeah.
they were tough though because like they had the armored masks and stuff as well,
Yeah.
didn't they?
Yeah, like then, and there was some of them was quite kind of like in an old kind of African tribe, wasn't it? Because I remember them
Yeah.
having the what do you
The
call
full
it?
feathers and all, and
Yeah, but they had the the what's the word I'm looking for? The shields, the wooden shield.
Yeah.
Oh,
Remember them?
like the Zulu warrior shield.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, there was some of them very, very tough.
yeah. They were very good actually. You know, I was quite surprised how good they were. Like I always remember, like there were a funny thing about it. Say that one of them looks like Saddam Hussein. There was a running joke that Saddam Hussein was in Resident Evil 5.
I missed that. I'll have to check that out. I'm gonna have to replay it now.
Yeah. It's one of the enemies, but
Yeah.
he's done kind of like he looks like Saddam with the tash and everything.
I'll have to check that out. Go back and look for Sadie. See where he's at.
Yeah. No, I just think they were pretty good enemy actually. And you know the fact is, I think there was a lot more on screen, wasn't there, because of PS3.
Yeah, I felt there was anyway. You know, and I felt the AI was smarter this time around because see, even when you were doing fighting the Magini, is the Magini? Am I getting this wrong? Am I butchering it?
Yeah, it's Majini, so Magini, yeah.
Magini. So when you're fighting them, like you could be up in an upper level, and you think, right, I've seen a guy coming behind me. There's two in front of me. And all of a sudden you're getting hit with arrows from a guy that's on the ground that you never saw. You know,
Yeah.
so you're under 3 different areas of attack, and then when you came down to the ground, you then the upper level shooting down at you. Like they did a good job of.
Yeah,
Because I
they were
felt
very
in Resident Evil 4, a lot of the guys were carrying knives and stuff, so they would have to jump down to come and get you. So you knew if you jumped down a level, you were mostly safe, you know, unless there were the crossbow guy.
Yeah.
But these guys, there was a lot of different variation of enemy.
Yeah. What did you think of the this version of the chainsaw guy? He was a lot taller, like he was much bigger. And remember that?
He didn't have the same impression as I think the guy in 4.
Plus, they got rid of the animation where he'd chop your head off. They didn't show it.
Yeah.
Like he would, essentially, he was chopping your head off, but it didn't show it. You know,
Yeah.
which was a bit strange.
Disappointing. If I'm going to die, I want to see some gore.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. They had their version of the El Gigante in it as well.
That bit,
was-
especially when with the crashed Jeep and you had to shoot him with the turret. That for me is
tough.
probably easily one of the most infuriating parts of the game. That part was ridiculous. And that would take an absolute age. And the thing is, a lot of times, a lot of it was just pure luck based, because a lot of times it just, no matter how many times you shot him, you just couldn't put him down.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. Especially if you played that on the professional difficulty, you may forget about it.
Nope.
I did it once. It says I'll never do it again. It was no.
I remember trying to complete it on the hardest difficulty, and that bit was just a nightmare.
'Cause I remember trying to get all of the trophies in it. There was one trophy I couldn't get, and that was actually to do with one of the DLCs. It was actually the one where you play as Jill and the other guy, the other mercenary guy that's part of the BSA, he's a mate Chavez, and tried to play that on professional, but I got to a point where it was just an endless stream of enemies, and they just kept coming, and you just the only way is to get to the next checkpoint. But on professional, it was just impossible because you had really weak weapons, and I couldn't do it. I was like, no, I give up.
Not like it.
I know, but I got to a point with that. It was too difficult. There was no way I couldn't do it. You know, so I tried, but no.
Tried
Do
that.
you remember the enemy, the instigator enemy? He was the guy with the megaphone and the sunglasses.
Oh, yeah. He was
Yeah.
always like...
Yeah.
He was
I
a
always-
man.
Yeah. I literally always, if I was thinking, dude, you in Resident Evil 5, you'd be that guy with the megaphone.
All right, lads. Get him. He's over there. He's wearing the Lecoq Sportif hoodie. He's hiding behind that bin. Go get him.
That'd definitely be you.
That would be, mate, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He trying to
Would
say
you-
out loud, mate.
That never started again.
He'd be the bad influence, right?
That would be.
That never started again.
He was in multiple locations, I think, like mainly at the start, I think. You know, you'd see him about the place.
He was a recurring asshole.
He was, yeah.
Gathering the troop.
That's it, yeah. Well, so Peter, you touched on it earlier about the Lost and Nightmares DLC. That when I played that, I was so happy, and it was quite short.
Yeah, it was very
I just
short.
remember, I was like, it proved to me, I was like, right, they actually still can do survival horror.
Yeah.
They choose not to. It's like look, we throw in like a 30-minute DLC here, you know, keep them all quiet.
But that was like, yeah, that was a nice snippet that they put in, because it proved that they could balance action and horror. They were able to do it, like you said.
Yeah,
but
they could do
didn't.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember being like on one hand like loving it, and then the other hand being like,
It's too
why can't
short.
we have more of this?
Yeah.
It's too short.
Yeah, it's far too short. That was the only downside with it. It was actually really good, but it was too short.
And it was genuinely scary at times.
Yeah,
parts.
it was.
played it.
Oh, you would have. You would have done.
You would
You
have.
would. You would have
It
done.
plays Jill and Chris. It's based around
It's leading up to the
opening
events. Yeah, it's leading up to the events when Jill sacrifices herself.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I did. I just can't remember.
You're in the Oswald and Spencer's estate, and
Yeah.
it's very like the mansion in Resident Evil 1.
Yeah.
Very, very like it.
See, they were actually on the
Class.
they were actually they got informed that they were on the lookout for Wesker, but they didn't expect to find him in the room killing Spencer. They didn't. They knew he was around, but they didn't expect him to be there.
Was it not
So-
that they were sent there to get
They
Spencer?
were sent there to interrogate Spencer and to
and he
yeah.
just happened to be there.
He
Right?
happened to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it.
Sorry, Dave. Sorry.
Go on, no, go
just,
ahead.
just out of curiosity, does anyone know the time frame between when Jill sacrificed herself and Resident Evil 5? How long passed?
I think it was. I think it was 2 or 3 years. I think.
Yeah, because I didn't think it was months. I think it
No, I think it was a good there was a good length of time. I think so. There was.
Right. Well, I think it says that Lost in Nightmares is based in 2006, I think.
Yeah.
Timeline.
Yeah.
So Resident Evil 5 was, what's the timeline of Resident Evil 5? Oh, 2009. So 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There-
Sorry, I
there's-
said earlier that Resident Evil 5 was 10 years after 4. It was actually 5 years after 4.
Still very interesting. Like you'd love to know, like if Jill was under Wesker's control for 3 years, what she got up to. I'm pretty sure he used her for other little wee missions. You know, we get
Yeah.
to see some of that.
Well, he was using because he was using Ada. Ada was his kind of like go-to person for using a lot of that kind of stuff as well. You know, more like those more spy kind of operations
Yeah.
and that.
Yeah, he was manipulating a lot, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, as you said, right? Like 3 years. You'd love to know what was happening in 3 years.
Yeah.
Like why
And like-
why can't the game be developed around those parts? That's why
Well-
they jump
well,
very
here's-
far ahead. I think a lot of the
Exactly.
time.
And like here's the thing. If it's been 3 years that she is fully aware of what she's doing, right? And she's been there for 3 years, you'd love to see a game after that with her like basically trying to get back in the BSAA and it's like her first mission and she's mentally scarred from it. You could have a survival horror game there easily. PTSD, Jill, very, very, there I am pitching my own business.
There you go.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, because the only game that you kind of see any sort of reflection of like a person's like the sanity or insanity basically of how it's affected him was in Resident Evil 6 when Chris was suffering with amnesia. That was the only time you ever seen really any of the characters really suffer from something. You know, they never really delved into the psyche of the characters. Now they kind of have done in the spin-offs, you know, like them the CGI movies, you know, in small instances, but they've never really done a touch on that in the games as such, which I would have liked to see more of. Like, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, it's
for
a
sure.
pity. Like I know Revelations. Like Revelations is based after 4, but before those events where Chris and Jill
It's in between
Spencer's
4 and
there.
5. Yeah.
Yeah, and because she's in the BSA
Yeah.
at that point. in
Yeah, I
Revelations.
think the whole foundation, I think of that, it was still in its early stages, I think, as well.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
just kind of created, I suppose. What did you think of the other DLC? That was it Desperate Escape it was called?
That's the one I was on about earlier on, where you play as Jill after she has that mind control device removed from her, and then she's walking with Chev, his mate. That's also part of the BSAA. They try and escape wherever they are, the island they're on. It was good, but it goes back to more of the action kind of element seen within the original game. Yeah.
I remember that actually.
Yeah.
Thinking to myself, Jesus, like one DLC is really good, you know, the Lost Nightmares, and then the Desperate Escape was like back to the action, more.
I wouldn't even talk about the deathmatch part because that was crap. That was no.
Yeah, no, not
Terrible.
Do you remember like they released a patch so that the PlayStation Move could be used with it?
Yeah.
PlayStation 3, and we all thought, oh, this is going to be cool. This is going to be as good as Resident Evil 4 was on the Wii with the Wii Move controller.
Not a
But
chance.
it was shockingly bad. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ! I think I played it for like 5
Yeah.
minutes and said no.
Well, because I consider the Wii version of Resident Evil 4 to easily be one of the best versions of that. Probably the best version of that game I've ever played because the Wii controls, I have to say, worked absolutely perfect with that game.
Yeah. Did you ever play that, Eddie? The Wii version?
Not on
of
the
it?
Wii, man. No.
No, it's so
It was
good.
it was brilliant on the
Actually
Wii.
was good. Yeah.
Yeah,
It actually enhanced the
it did.
experience.
Yeah, you could respond a lot quicker to movements and
And
interactions and
the
stuff.
quick times were much easier,
Yeah,
as far as I
Yeah.
remember.
yeah,
And was it just like using swipes of your arm for like the knife fight and stuff? Was it? Or
yeah.
Well, the controller was like
You'd flick a
almost like
button
light
on
gun,
it.
you
Yeah,
know?
you flick a button on the controller to take out your knife, and then you just swipe, and he would
Yeah.
swipe the knife.
So easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a case where you controller say left hand, then you had kind of like
You had the nunchuck in the left hand.
Nunchuck then and
Yeah.
you can move around.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, your movement
Remember
was
that.
with your left hand.
Yeah.
Then
And then the shooting and all the interaction
what was
with
the
the
Wii
right.
controller called? I keep thinking it's called the Wii Move. Or
It was
Just
a
the Wii,
nunchuck,
Wii,
wasn't it?
just the Wii remote, I think.
Wii
That was
remote,
all.
right,
Yeah.
And it was so good, like, just being able to shoot and get headshots, and that was much easier with it.
Yeah.
I thought.
Even doing the
And-
mercenaries mode, which I found very, very
Yeah.
difficult on likes
Yeah.
of the PS3 or PS2, but yet the Wii, I managed to finish it all. It was just more. It was just far better to play on that
Yeah.
version of the game, hands down.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you
yeah.
say it
Yeah.
was like akin to like playing with PC and a mouse? Was it like that level of
Yeah.
precision?
Yeah, it
sort
would
of,
be the
yeah.
it had that
Yeah.
kind of, you know, the way like the responsiveness. You know yourself in playing like FPS games or even third person
just
shooters on
move
with the
your
keyboard
hand
and
and
mouse.
you're on the top.
Yeah, yeah, it's literally just instant. Yeah, that's what it felt like. It was very like that.
Yeah, I even found using the knife was much
Yeah.
more efficient, right?
Yeah,
Because you know the way, like, you'd knock them down and then to be on the ground, you'd be swiping with a knife, saving loads of bullets. It was so good, you know.
the only downside is when the battery started to go on the remote, which did happen often, and you're like trying to swipe and you can't do nothing, and nothing's happening. You're trying to aim and the gun's still stuck on the floor. You're like, no, that happened a lot.
And then you find out there's no batteries.
Give me some double A batteries.
Yeah, then you only realise you've no more batteries left in the house. You're like, oh my god, no, crap.
Goodbye, goodbye TV
Yeah.
remote.
Yeah.
But is there any other parts of Resident Evil 5 anybody wants to talk about before moving on?
Yeah, just before we say go on to 6, I know say like 4 kind of started off the action, and then 5 kind of upped it, expanded it. But question like I'd be asking, like, it was survival horror. Now, was Capcom trying to compete with other game franchises that they were trying to move away from survival horror, make it more action? So what audiences were they trying to target? Because to me, they would have always had a Resident Evil fan base, but then survival horror, then they started to move away from it. So I'm going, why?
Yeah,
what was
they
the method
were.
behind it?
What happened during that time, see, Resident Evil 4 obviously was the first game to kind of inspire that over the shoulder. And the thing is, that is still the pinnacle of every kind of similar style of game, even today. It's always referenced by Resident Evil 4. But what Resident Evil 4 did, like you said, it moved away from the horror element and focused more on action. And then what happened is it produced a lot of clones and a lot of other franchises to kind of jump on board. And then what ended up happening then in 2007, Call of Duty started to take off then with Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. And that just completely blew the whole thing out of the water. Because that game was awesome. We all know, every one of us played that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And what happened
Call of
was...
Duty did spring to mind.
Yeah, because what happened was then Call of Duty became so big and online, and especially because it was around the time of the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. Online gaming was starting to come into its own, and what happened was those type of deathmatch style games and action games were becoming the main focus. And what happened was, like, literally every game, every franchise that you've seen in it, maybe bar a few examples, they all started to implement multiplayer elements. Like, you even seen the very first Tomb Raider game that was the remake of Tomb Raider that had multiplayer elements, which we all know Tomb Raider never had that before as well. And that, for me, that killed that version of the game as well, because that was a really good game, but I hated the online part of it. I didn't really like it at all. And they done the same with the Uncharted series then later on in the PS3 as well. Like, the online elements, some of them were good, but I just didn't think that they needed it.
Did the same in Mass Effect. Mass
Yeah.
Effect 3, historically a single player game, and the 3 in multiplayer.
And it's like what was happening was, it was just, like, say, jumping on a trend that literally every game or every big franchise had to be more action focused, more kind of obscene in terms of its explosions, its action elements. But every single game, because they thought that by adding in multiplayer into every single game that it was going to sell more, and in a lot of ways it did. And that's where Resident Evil 5 then kind of transitioned then, because Capcom really they're still trying to do it now, but it's just not. They realise now that it's just not the focus. People want more. With Resident Evil, they want more survival horror, that kind of way. But for a time, they really were. I remember reading an article before where they actually openly admitted that they wanted to compete with Call of Duty, but the problem was is they didn't have any unique franchises of their own to compete in that realm of FPS shooter. So that's where they were like, oh, we can turn Resident Evil into a more action focused game because we've succeeded with that with Resident Evil 4. So we're going to use that as a catalyst to move forward. So that's what they did.
Didn't they bring out that shooter game? It literally was a Call of Duty clone, and it was, you could either be Umbrella. Yeah. Hang on.
There was one in 2013 or 2014, Umbrella Corps.
Umbrella Corps, that's it.
Yeah.
So basically, you could either be Umbrella, and it was just basically a shooter. Like, there was no storyline to it, and like one of the maps was the village from Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, it wasn't great. No, I bought that cheap on the store. I played it, but it wasn't great.
I think going back to Steve-O's point there, I think when Resident Evil 5 was the first Resident Evil game to be released. Those consoles like the Xbox 360, the PS3, which had the online element, they didn't have it on prior ones to it. Well, I guess you had Outbreak and that there, but I don't think that was online in Europe, right? That was only Japan.
Yeah,
it was online in Europe. But
was it?
Yeah, because I got on.
The console was horrendous on it, right?
It was horrendous. You had to buy like an extension, it was like an Ethernet kit for your PS2, and my God.
Yeah, the only game that actually I think that kind of done well in terms of online on the PS2, them SOCOM games. Apparently they were really well suited to the online features on the PS2.
But I think it was developed, wasn't it, to be like that was his main focus, was to be multiplayer, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
But going back to the Resident Evil thing, trying to get in on the Call of Duty audience, I think that's where it went wrong for them. Where the fact that the console was online, they needed a multiplayer element. The co-op was that, like, even the setting of Resident Evil 5. When you think about it, like, you could have been on any one of those maps in Call of Duty 4, like Crash. You know? They all looked like that setting.
Yeah, they did.
And they were trying to, like, when you think about it, like, there's probably, logically, when you think about it, Resident Evil 5 was probably a lot of people's first end of that series.
I think it was. Yeah, there was a lot of people, I think it was. Very, how would you put it, Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 5 was also, I think, your first entry for a lot of people too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, like, the point about Call of Duty being out at that time as well, they had to tap into that.
It provided a massive influence, literally, for every other massive genre-defining series, literally, to try and copy elements of Call of Duty, because it was just so popular, because what was happening was even in terms of sales, a lot of other franchises and genres, their sales were literally dipping like crazy because everybody was playing Call of Duty, so they were, and they realized, well, we're either going to have to shift our focus or adapt or try and change things what we have, and literally, or even just add in multiplayer, even if it doesn't need it, we'll throw it in anyway because it'll sell it. And in most cases that's what happened, and it did. So
but I remember at the time, wasn't there a lot of backlash?
There was
a lot of backlash to games not having
that was the thing,
play value. It was just one and done.
See, what was wrong is as well, because people became accustomed to that style at the time, and we were kind of like spoilt in a lot of ways. So what ended up happening was, when a game didn't have it, you were kind of like, now for me personally, I never liked that having multiplayer in every single game. I liked, if I wanted a multiplayer game, I would just play Call of Duty and I'd be happy with it. That kind of way. I didn't need to have like Tomb Raider to have multiplayer. I didn't need a Resident Evil game to have multiplayer or anything like that. For me, it was just like, no. But I suppose I'm just kind of old school that way. But a lot of people kind of, a lot of other people felt differently. They were like, no, they want a multiplayer in every game. But I think it was because it was reflective of the time, I think, as well.
It was a social thing, man.
It was.
Like, people were like on forums going, right, okay, like, this is before the times of Destiny doing raids or anything. Like, who's hopping on GTA, who's hopping on Call of Duty, or Gears of War was another massive online.
That was, I remember that.
The Horde, when Gears of War brought out the Horde mode in Gears 2, that was like, people were on that all the time.
I actually remember, because I never had an Xbox back then, but I do remember Gears of War. That was the equivalent of Call of Duty in some regards, to being huge. Back then,
it was before. Am I right in saying Gears was before COD 4?
It was before. I think it was a few months before. I think, wasn't it, or about a year before?
Because it was a launch title with the Xbox 360.
It was actually. Yeah. I remember that being huge when it came out.
Well, Gears of War came out November 7th, 2006.
The only other online like FPS shooter that was huge at the time, I remember on the original Xbox, because I remember playing it online with a lad who used to, when I was in college with. I remember being down in his house, and there was a group of us that went down. We were playing Halo 2. We were playing it on the original Xbox, and we were playing multiplayer on that. And I have to say, Halo 2 was awesome. So it was. Yeah, it was really good. So it was, and I think that's where the trend kind of started. So yeah.
Yep.
I know it's all about money and the whole lot, companies need to make money and trying to entice people in and widen their audiences and the whole lot. But to me, but doing that and trying to compete with the likes of Call of Duty and big games, to me, they failed in that sense. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion. You know, like Resident Evil's always going to have an audience because it's Resident Evil, survival horror. That's what people want, including ourselves. But to kind of veer away from that, I just think they failed in that part of it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I got a question for you all, right? Like, do you think the Resident Evil series would be better if it wasn't AAA? Like high budget, if it just kind of went back to just, you know,
back to the basic.
Yeah, like it doesn't need to be AAA, millions spent on it. Just do it right, keep it survival horror.
Well, it's funny.
I think that could work, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, because the original Resident Evil game wasn't a AAA game. It was never considered to be because they never expected it to blow up the way that it did.
Yeah, but naturally a sequel always has to be bigger, better.
Oh yeah.
So more money's thrown at that kind of thing. When you look at some of the indie horror games you get now, like some of them are actually incredible, and you might only have a team of like maybe 10 developers. Some of them are even just one developer.
Some of them are even one, and what they're able to produce is incredible.
Yeah, it is actually incredible. But you know, if you think of Resident Evil, like Capcom saying, "Oh, well, I can't have a team of 500 developers working on this game. It's costing us 20 million, or I don't know what it costs, but say it costs 20 million, and then they only sell 25 million in sales. So that's considered
a massive failure.
That's hurt us. So therefore, we're not going to bother. So that prompts you to go into let's make it more like Call of Duty.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it loses its own identity. You know,
it does. I'm going to take your question and put a bit of a spin on it, right? What if they did two things? They had a AAA game every maybe 3-4 years, right? But then they had a free-to-play game, which was like, not like Warzone, but it's open world in the BSA, and every season there's new missions, and you could actually tie it in to story, because they do that with Fortnite. Or Star Trek Online does it. Like Star Trek Online, the game's ancient, but they get voice actors coming in, and there's different, like there's stories added every month,
different scenarios and stuff.
It's not even different. It's like different stories. So like you could do an open world game akin, like you could have it that basically.
I know what you mean. You know, appeal to all audiences now.
Because it's like you sort of maybe dipping in a wee bit to the Warzone audience there, because it's that battle royale thing, but don't do it as a battle royale thing. Do it as in like a survival horror thing. You know, you can make it interesting. You know, in that way. Plus, then they're getting a steady stream of income from the battle passes on that. You know what I mean? Basically just saying like they could have this free to play game. It could be open world, it could be set find area. Very simple thing they could do is you're in a city, there's a BOW attack, the whole city's overrun. You could look at like Army of the Dead Vegas, right? And basically you're in this city and you've missions come every month, you know what I mean, and you're part of this team is maybe on the wall or whatever, go in the city and do scavenger runs and stuff, and you could have umbrella guys popping up, BOWs popping up, like you could even do a Destiny and have like a raid in it every month or something. And then what they do in Fortnite is, like I say, Fortnite is to play it with the kids, you have like your end of season finale where there's a cut scene and it wraps that story up and you go into the next season. I think people would play that. You know what I mean?
I actually like that idea. I would play that, like a PVE type thing. Like
PVE.
If the four of us wanted to play, co-op,
just swarms of enemies, and
there's a bunch of objectives. I like all that, like a strike type thing.
Pretty much, and like you say, have it that there's like loads of like notes here, notes there. Like if you find like dead Umbrella soldiers, and sometimes you'll find random drops of Umbrella guys dropping in or coming up through like. God, there's me pitching my own Resident Evil game again. But,
it kind of puts me in mind of what you, just when I was thinking it there, the Tom Clancy's The Division, in that kind of way.
I really liked The Division. I remember like it's post-apocalyptic as well, like, but it's always like, you know, when COVID was happening, I was like, oh shit, is The Division happening in real life? But it's you're right in what you're saying, because if you had like, you're right, you have your team one side developing that style, keeping that audience happy, and then having the single player story mode survival horror fan happy on their side too, because as far as I know, Capcom have 2 or 3 teams developing Resident Evil games.
And plus you're constantly getting money. Like you look at how GTA, that's how GTA 5 is still going. It's because the online, like they brought out Red Dead 2 and there was like, nobody wants to buy horses, lads, let's get back on the Formula 1 cars, come on. Basically Red Dead's forgotten about now, and GTA 5s are still the focus because it's the cash cow
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
6 comes
Yeah.
out. So they're using that just to generate income.
Yeah.
And year on year, it's like one of the best selling games and the most grossing game.
Yeah.
And then they used whatever money they're having of all their profits, and then the rest goes into development for 6 because they know 6 has to be better. So there's no reason why you can't have a game that satisfies your appetite for the now, while like even when you're and it's a perfect way as well to get you excited for the next game, because when the game is about to release like a month or 3 months or 6 months before, the season could all be about that game, the lead up to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's
it's you know what I mean?
Good idea.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Definitely see in-game purchases have something there, as you're saying, like that's benefit to you. Not like
Yeah.
Fortnite, where in-game purchase and all is your skins. What? I don't care what that can look like. Give me some
But even
weapons,
like-
give me something.
But when
Benefit.
you look at Destiny, like Destiny has the annual season pass, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how many actual seasons is there in a year in Destiny? Is it just the one, or is there two?
No, is it 3? I think it's 4. Every 3
4.
months, I think it is.
So it's every 3 months. It's
Yeah.
technically a new season. Yeah. I don't not like that idea, man. I actually, it's pretty cool. It's like sometimes when you're playing some game, you love the gameplay element of it, and you're saying, "Oh, imagine if Resident Evil did this style, but with zombies. This would be pretty cool." You always have
Well,
those
them
thoughts when you're
thoughts.
playing. Yeah.
Dude, I was playing Days Gone, and I was like, if this was Resident Evil, it'd be, the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
fact it was, me, I'm an open world guy. I love the open world stuff.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
play the way you
100%,
play.
yeah.
But the fact that if you had that with Resident Evil, it's because one of the main things about Days Gone, which really got it felt Resident Evil, was you're working with these scientists, and you have to go into the caves where all the hordes are, and you had to, like, there was one of the missions where this team went into this cave and they never come out, and you have to go in and find out what happened. I'm like, oh jeez, man, thanks. So you go on down, and when you're walking through the cave, it's pitch black, and it's a proper I Am Legend moment. You turn on your light, and there's about like 200-300 zombies, and you're like, light off. You're like, oh crap, what do I do now? Because you're standing like, and they're like less than a foot away from you. You've walked right up on them, and you have to walk your way around them, and then you find all the guys, and then you're getting the audio logs where they're talking, they're observing the zombies, and they're saying this zombie still had some human characteristics, like looking at its watch and looking at the time, and like you could do that in a game, and you're learning more about the infected and stuff. It's little things like that people love to do. Like, as you know yourself, when we played Resident Evil 1, we were like, who's Ada? Oh, poor John. And then they made something out of it, like a note in Resident Evil 1 that became a core plot point in the game.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good idea.
Yep. Okay, so have we any more points to make on Resident Evil 5, or shall we move on?
We think we'll move on. Yeah.
Okay, lads, let's move on to Resident Evil 6. So probably the biggest Resident Evil game overall in sheer size, because you had 3 campaigns in this. 4 actually. If you include it.
Would it be the longest playing game time of all the Resident Evils?
I suppose if you combined all
if you combine
campaigns,
everything,
but
yeah.
I don't think I'm not sure. I don't really recall whether the individual campaigns were like really long.
No, I
I
don't
remember
think so. But
Resident Evil 4 took me like a long time to complete. So I don't
combine
know.
all 4 of them, I'd say it's probably. I reckon it could be the longest.
Yeah, but what do you remember? Like the hype up to it? It was
Yeah.
like, holy shit, there's zombies back in it. I remember being
The
Yeah.
president's dead.
But I just remember like the trailers and stuff like that, and everybody's big question was, are you going to be able to move and shoot in this? And then suddenly one of the trailers revealed Leon could move and shoot, but not only could he move and shoot, you had the dodge mechanics and I don't know what would you call them? Do you remember you could like jump back like Max Payne type thing?
Max Payne style, yeah.
Like that was kind of cool, but I was just happy that they brought like survival horror elements back in Leon's campaign.
Leon's was my favourite.
I thought Leon's was the best of the 3 of them, or 4 of them, should I say.
But as much as it's not my favourite Resident Evil game, but it's a hell of a game.
It is.
Like, each campaign, like Chris's campaign with what was his part?
Pierce.
Pierce, yeah.
Nevin, yeah.
Like that was your full on Resident Evil 5 follow up, wasn't it? Like action oriented.
Yeah,
But it was cool. It was really good. And then you had Jake and Sherry. So Jake was like, he had lots of melee combat, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was his kind of skill set. That was pretty cool actually when you think about it. But they kind of give you everything, wasn't it? Like I remember that game just had everything.
Yeah, because I remember your man
catered for everyone, really.
Because I remember your man Troy Baker done the voice of Jake
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
And then you find out that Jake's actually Wesker's
Wesker's son. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it even had a dinosaur in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like a transformer. He could literally change.
Autobots, roll out.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like when
That
I was doing that.
that for
really
me
not that
was
funny.
like what the end part of 5. That's where it just got
Yeah.
ridiculous for me.
Yeah.
That was that has to be probably the most over the top part I've ever seen in a Resident Evil game. It was just ridiculous. Now it was cool to look at, but I was just like, this is
Yeah,
crazy.
but that was Leon's campaign, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And like it started off a really small thing, and
Yeah.
then he's just getting bigger
Yeah.
Became a
and bigger.
dinosaur.
It's like what?
yeah.
Jesus
It's-
Christ!
It's like that whole thing
Took
from a
Viagra.
scary movie. But wait, there's more.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better.
Yeah. You had Umbrella was back in this, but it was known as Neo Umbrella, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy, like with each iteration of the game, that there was always a different variation of a new virus that kept coming out. Like, where did they keep developing all these viruses from? So yeah, but the C
Well,
virus is probably the most deadly one of them all because it was the one that was airborne as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could do the most damage.
That was the
I'm
one.
through the
That
whole
was
alphabet at this stage.
yeah. Jesus Christ! Like, but
But like,
no, go ahead.
like, no,
No,
I
you-
was just saying. For me, like, just playing when I was playing even Leon's, like that opening scene in Leon's when you find the Jeep,
Yeah,
like in the alleyway, was a bit going to be good, and then it felt like it started off a wee bit survival horror, and then it went then action, John
Yeah.
Wick towards the end, you know. But I was enjoying the stuff with Ada. Like I sort of liked how the campaigns a bit like overlapped each other as well.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I thought that was good.
Yeah, I enjoyed Ada's campaign. I
Yeah.
thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
I can't remember what was it called.
Forget what it was called, but I just remember the first mission. You're in the submarine, aren't you?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
that was a kind of a tough
Definitely.
mission because you kept getting lost in it because every room looked
Yeah.
the same.
But the overall, this game, like, it was just definitely like there was no doubt you were getting your money's worth.
Oh, you
had
definitely-
Yeah, you definitely
4
did.
campaigns. You had your mercenaries again, multiplayer.
The
That's-
mercenaries mode in that game was actually really cool as well. I
It
really
was
enjoyed the
fun.
mercenaries.
I
Yeah,
actually
I did
found
too.
some old footage I recorded from that the other day on my YouTube channel of me playing as Leon. I think it was Leon, yeah. And I thought it was class. And then when I looked at what other people were doing, I thought John level good. But no, but it like the game was awesome. To me that felt like the closest to Resident Evil, the original Resident Evil 2 in terms of the scenario.
Yeah,
Although you weren't getting different scenarios, you were seeing sort of different parts of the story by overlapping with different people, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
So that's
Right,
where I enjoyed that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely
Because
did myself.
yeah, I thought it was cool later on in the game. Like you said, when Chris interacted with Leon, when they actually did come to an altercation, I thought that was pretty cool. Because even the fight, the action in that scene was really, really cool. I thought.
Tense. Sparked the debate,
yeah.
didn't it? Who would
It
win,
did.
Chris versus
Yeah.
Leon?
Yeah.
Leon would have kicked his ass. Leon would have kicked his ass.
Yeah.
I definitely did.
Leon can't punch boulders, man. Come on, be realistic.
I know, but Chris is
He had those
slow.
boxing gloves on.
I think Chris is
And
definitely.
Leon only has one eye to look at him because
Chris definitely can fight, but he definitely is, like you said, he's bigger and he's stronger. But I think Leon is the most versatile of the two.
Yeah.
I think this you would, yeah,
The four scenarios, so Leon, Chris, like all the story with each one, were all interwoven with each character, you know what I mean? And I thought that was very, very good. And like each one character then had like kind of like their own unique abilities. So like one could be weak, one could be faster reload, one could be faster running, you know what I mean? I thought that was very good. And even the likes of the zombies or what do you call them, the Javo, is that what you call them?
yeah,
Oh,
Bravo or something like that.
Yeah.
They were like
Even-
the Yakuza sort of guys, weren't they?
Yeah.
They even introduced to like not say introduced, but through the skill points, killing enemies then, and they drop, and you could pick the points up, and you could use that then to upgrade your weapons and
Yeah.
different things. I actually enjoyed that, you know.
The one thing I also liked as well with regards to the characters, now this is with the co-op element, is the fact is that your partners, especially some of them, remember like your man Pierce, some of them had their own unique weapon that was specific to that character. I remember Pierce had a really cool sniper rifle, more like an anti-tank kind of rifle.
Yeah.
It was very powerful that you couldn't use with any other character. He had it specifically, and I thought that was really cool.
It was because
Yeah.
Pierce
Pierce was actually like a really fan favorite character. Like,
Yeah.
people loved him, and like it was kind of sad. People say there's sort of like an unofficial romance story there going on, like basically that Pierce like loved Chris. Like if you go on the internet, it's everywhere. Like it's everywhere, you know. But like when you do look at it, you do probably think maybe was he the first, character in the Resident Evil franchise, with a teasing that, and it was a shame they killed him off because I thought he was a pretty good character.
Yeah. Well, that
He's
was a
very
big moment,
grounded.
wasn't it?
Right.
It packed
I'm
a
going to
bit
say
of
something to
emotional
this.
punch.
Pierce was very, very good, and he's 10 times better than what the other character I'm going to say. But do you think he better resembled? I thought so. It was Steve out of Code Veronica.
No.
No, not even close.
Steve.
No,
Steve-
look-wise. I'm talking
No,
about.
no,
No.
no.
Steve Burnside. Jeez. No.
Jesus.
No, I thought so, because we like killed him off, he mutated, and then Pierce the same, and going, it's kind of the same. You know what I
No.
mean?
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah, similarities
Yeah.
and terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
No,
That's what I was thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of the same.
But I
Yeah,
think what they were setting it up was with Chris. It was the emotional punch for him because he basically brought Chris back from the brink.
yeah,
And then the whole way through the map, he's sort of like his right hand man. In the end, he makes the sacrifice.
yeah,
And it sort of sets Chris up now that's going forward. Like, got a lot of baggage to carry. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I thought it was good in terms of the storytelling there. Believe it or not, I wasn't a big fan of the Jake campaign. I found.
I actually did not. I genuinely I liked all four campaigns. I keep saying three, but forget about it. But I genuinely liked all of them. And I didn't mind Jake's at all. I actually liked this character. Maybe like this character more than the actual campaign itself.
Yeah, I have no problem with the character. I just
Yeah.
felt the campaign. I don't know. It was my least favorite out of them all. Put it that way.
Yeah.
If I had to rank them.
I think maybe I would agree with you. Yeah, the one thing about Jake and Sherry's campaign, what was it called? The Ustanak, the big massive
Yeah.
creature.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
He was awesome.
Yeah.
he was cool, tough, terrifying.
yeah.
But that was, I genuinely did enjoy that campaign. But who was the main? I'm struggling to remember who was the main villain or enemy in Chris and Pierce campaign.
Well, Chris and Pierce.
It was Ada's twin sister they were after.
That's right.
Yeah, she was the one that got Chris's team originally killed. That one that caused the accident that he had. Where he lost
What
his
was her
memory.
name in it? Can you remember?
Oh, can't remember her name.
Is it Clara?
Could be
Carla.
something like that.
Carla.
Carla. That's
That's
what it is. Yeah.
Jeez, yeah. I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
Good job I asked that question.
Yeah. Because it was the Secretary of State was Leon's, wasn't it? Or was it the Vice President? There was someone to do with the American government was the
Yeah,
body for Leon.
yeah. Yeah, he was. I think but his family, I think, was also one of the founding members of the Umbrella Corporation as well. I think they kind of had that twist in it too.
Did, yeah.
Yeah, there was
'Cause
some
he had
sort of
that ring on
heritage.
him.
Yeah,
He had the ring on him because
Yeah.
the clock.
yeah,
But like I was terrified playing Resident Evil 6 because I was just waiting to hear Leon and be like, Sherry, please don't be here.
Yeah. No, she was actually not bad in that game. I thought Sherry Belkin.
No, she actually wasn't.
Oh, no, I wasn't. I didn't even.
You're
say
thinking of
Sherry.
Ashley.
The President Store.
Ashley, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if that was the same president though, compared to the one that was in 4. I think
It was.
was it?
Yeah.
Was that Ashley's
was.
dad?
It's Ashley's dad because you see him afterward. There's a after he kills cutscene, and it's after he brings Ashley back, and I can't repay a gun for me.
Yeah.
And he mentions Ashley
Yeah.
in the cutscene, if I remember. So
Oh.
it established that that's the president.
Yeah.
For
Yeah, because I know that him and Leon were very close. Yeah, yeah.
because in Resident Evil 4, that's Leon's first mission from graduating
Yeah.
Stratcom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because the president personally sent him into
did,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It took place. The story of this game takes place on Christmas Eve. Jeez, that's terrible timing.
Yeah.
2012.
Die Hard 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's you're right. Yeah, Die Hard. Yeah, yippee ki
so many bad.
So Peter, what's your favorite campaign?
I like what Mark said, or I would say like what Eddie said. I would have to go with Leon's campaign because it was the one for me that felt it was definitely, now even though it's action focused, but it was a slower pace. It did get a bit more heavy on the action in the last chapter, but the first few chapters for me, I really enjoyed it because it definitely had more atmosphere compared to anything else in the game. it was darker toned, and it was the one that focused more on the zombies, whereas the other campaigns kind of moved away from the zombies a little bit. So it did. It didn't have. It did have zombies, but not to the same degree that it did in Leon's one.
Yeah.
It was the closest to Resident Evil 2, I felt. Do you remember the bit where
Yeah.
you're walking with the torches and all? Like, that bit was freaky.
Yeah.
You know,
It was dark. It was very atmospheric. That was the one thing they definitely did get right in that sense. So they did, you know. And plus, graphically, it was one of the best looking games on the PS3. It actually was a massive improvement, even on top of 5. And 5 was already a good looking game.
Yeah.
6 was a phenomenal looking game. In fairness to it, it was.
Yeah, I remember like you were in Japan, weren't you? I think in
Yeah.
Leon's campaign.
Yeah, later on
I
in the
remember,
game. Yeah,
I remember looking at these.
yeah, yeah.
Just
Yeah, it was a phenomenal looking game.
yeah. Is in Chris's campaign? Are you in Japan also?
You go in later on. Yeah, that's where they
because
kind of like.
isn't there a
That's
part,
where
like,
that's
where you're on the streets and all hell's breaking loose. Cause
Yeah, it's in.
Toward the end.
Yeah, because it's somewhere in that area, like, because that's where the stories intertwine later on in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember like there's a part like where you're walking the street,
Yeah.
and like the TV, what do you call it, reporters and stuff are there, like trying to scoop a story off you.
Yeah.
and the, like I remember like visually, even like the ground and stuff like that looked amazing.
Yeah, it's very realistic.
looking.
Yeah, but sure, apparently, like when I remember looking back, even with like so the development and stuff, sure, apparently they had like 600 people working on that game. Yeah, crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
But like, in saying that though, Chris's was in Europe at the start though, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think so. Yeah, he's oh, what is it? Was it a place? Oh, I'm trying to think of the name of the place.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, because he bumps into Sherry then.
Bar or something.
Yeah, because he end up fighting one of those El Gigante dudes.
Yeah.
And that's where he actually bumped into Sherry. It was the first time that Chris had met Sherry. And he says, Claire has talked a lot about you. And because he makes a reference to Claire,
yeah.
you know.
But
So,
but I remember correctly, like Chris actually was gone out of the BSA, wasn't it? And this is, remember you were saying, Peter, like the side effects of all of this.
Yeah.
Like it focused on that with Chris, wasn't it? Like
It
he had
did, it did,
PTSD or something.
yeah, yeah,
And he was, because that's the whole scene. He's in the bar drunk,
yeah,
right? And that's it. They bring him back in out of whatever rough spot he's going through to bring him back out and get him back
Yeah.
into the BSA and the story from there, right?
yeah. That's when Pierce, because he's in the bar and he's sitting there and he's just kind of observing him, and he you know, that's when he kind of steps in then after a while.
Pierce brought
Yeah.
him back.
Yeah,
To me, that had major that felt like an Easter egg. Raccoon City File 1, you know, the operation.
Yeah.
Because the bar scene, it's almost identical.
yeah.
As the walk into the bar started that game, it was almost identical to me. I felt like that was an Easter egg. That game.
Yeah, it probably was, yeah. Yeah.
Should have walked into the bar and called a pint. There was a pint there off. Favourite.
Yeah. What about you, Steve-O? What's your favourite campaign? Is it more or less
Trying
the
to
same?
think. It's more or less the same. I can't remember which one was it. Leon or was it Chris that I played first? I'd say it was probably Leon that I played first.
Yeah, I would imagine everybody played
I
Leon
think,
first.
I'm nearly sure it was Leon that I played first. Then it was definitely Chris. The others then they would have been the least. No, I enjoyed them. Now don't get me wrong. It was more. It was a lot more action orientated than 5. You know what I mean? But even at that, still. I did enjoy it because the other elements that they added in, I think they had something, like a quick shot.
Yeah,
Yes,
it did. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They had that straight headshot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that would get you out of a pickle if you were stuck, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Different little things that you mentioned earlier on, things like rolling, I think, or shooting while you're running, and different elements like that. You know what I mean, they did up their game in that sense.
Yeah, because
Well,
was there right in saying there's a sprint mechanic in it?
There is, yeah.
Keep the button bashing, is it?
Yeah, because you could also take enemies out as well. Like you could knock them over when especially you used to do a lot when you were Leon, because you'd run and then you'd do a sliding tackle on them. You see you would. Yeah.
Well, one of the cool things I thought about 6 as well was, you know, in previous games you had to check your health to see where you were at. In this character, he'd limp and he would shuffle along when he was getting in the red in 6. Because, like, if you remember, if you were hurt, it was like Resident Evil 1.
Yeah.
Didn't know until
old
you
school.
checked.
Yeah, well, in Resident Evil 1, there were like, you remember they used to do the drag their leg?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
literally
Well, Resident Evil 2, they did that. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Resident Evil 2, sorry.
Yeah.
So, but in this one, they brought it back because I remember when you were playing with Leon, if his health got too low, start doing something like
Yeah.
that, start dragging, limping, so you knew low.
Yeah,
Give him a pint, he'd be grand. Wouldn't be a bad run.
yeah. I think I'd have to agree. Leon's campaign, just because it's a little bit of old school Resident Evil, you know, was on that. I just thought overall, the entire game as a pack, not my favourite Resident Evil by any stretch of the imagination, but just not monster of a game.
Well, I think Yeah, because I think when you look at the context of both 4 and 5, right, they did definitely take a different approach. But I think it definitely set it up. It proved that there was elements there that they could improve on, and it showed, because when you look at the likes of the RE2 and RE3 remakes now, whatever you can say about RE3, but definitely Resident Evil 2, they took a lot of the formula from those two games, but they managed to perfect it with the Resident Evil 2 remake, and it worked. And you could see what they were trying to do. That it was inevitably, I think, going to go that way anyway when you think about it. You know, and it did. Now, obviously, there was a lot of trials and failures along the way, like, but yeah, it kind of came full circle when you think about it. In fairness, like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Like, it's still Resident Evil, and Resident Evil has a huge fan base, so people will buy it because it's Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Whether it's action or it's not, you know, people will still buy it because it's Resident Evil. Now, there's a lot more channels to go through now that you can actually look at. Basically, you know before the game comes out, is this for me, that's for me? No, it's not. But because it's Resident Evil, regardless of that,
Yeah, if you're a fan,
people-
you're
if you're a
gonna
fan,
invest in
people
it.
buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
definitely gonna
even like
invest in it.
yourselves, if you watched or looked at books or YouTube or whatever it was, you might say, "Oh no, it's not absolute. It's Resident Evil. Give it a go." You will get it because because Resident Evil is that big, so they have the fan base.
Yeah. Is there any other points you just want to make about Resident Evil 6?
Some of the enemy types were like good. I felt that apart from the boss with Leon, like
Yeah.
there was some very interesting sort of like, as you call
Yeah.
mini boss along the way. Like, do you remember the one where you have with Leon? It's after the bus crash and you're inside the church, and it's like a weird goo thing or something.
Oh yeah, and it's spewing out spores of the C
Yeah.
virus. Yeah, and you can't get close to it because it infects
Yeah.
everybody straight away.
Exactly. It was
Yeah.
tough, I thought. to
Yeah,
kill.
yeah, it was like a bullet sponge, like you said. It kept
it was.
it just, no matter how much you shot it, it just wouldn't go down.
Just wouldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Overall,
Don't
sorry, go on ahead.
No, you go ahead. No, you go
I'm
ahead.
just going to say overall, I know say Resident Evil 6, I liked it. I know it was a lot more action based and all, but I actually liked it. What would your overall opinions be? Do you like it?
I like the fact that it was the first game in the series to kind of allow you to move while you were shooting, and that you had a bit more interactivity. It was different, so it was, and I did like that element of it. So I did. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's the incredible visuals.
Yeah.
The amount of game, time in it, like, the multiple campaigns, the multiplayer, everything. The fact they brought back the element of the zombies. Peter says the move and shoot element. It's just an enormous game, and I just remember being very satisfied after playing it all. Yeah, that was definitely worth the money. Being disappointed that it still didn't satisfy me as survival horror. It was complete.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't like about it, when I think about it, the same as 5, there was no backtracking. It was even more evident in 6.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
literally, there was
Very
no
linear.
backtracking. Yeah, very, very linear, so.
I think that lends its hand though to the Hollywood formula, isn't it?
Yeah,
When you watch any film, it's always about moving forward, not
moving
going
forward,
back.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
felt at times. You definitely felt like you were watching a movie. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
With some of the visuals and the cinematic, like when Leon and Chris first meet, like that was a geek out moment for some fans because
Oh, yeah.
there was always that debate like who would hand whose ass, and you were thinking, oh, here we go.
Who's the alpha male?
Who's the
In
alpha
Resident
male? Exactly, you know what I mean? But we now still don't know, like, but it's saying that it was pretty good that way in terms of, and even like that, I think when you're a hardcore Resident Evil fan, you're sort of wanting to see what they're going to do next. Ada still has a massive question mark over her head in terms of like what's her motivations. Like it can't just all be money. You know what I mean? It has to be something else. It's the
They
motivation.
have to give her a bit more substance, don't
Yeah.
they, to the
They
character.
do, yeah.
Well, like, what did you think of the fact that they brought in like a doppelganger?
Yeah, it felt a bit weird, and it's like kind of like. Like when we go back to the history of those type of games, they always do tend to throw in a curveball literally out of nowhere. And for me, that's the element that always feels like as if it's rushed. And like we need to put something in there. What will we do? So like we'll just string something together and just go with the flow and see what happens. And that's sometimes that's what it felt like for me. So yeah.
She was this version's game of Jill Resident
Yeah,
Evil.
yeah.
Yeah,
she was
you're right.
She was the like, oh, it's not. You know what I mean? And actually, we're talking. What was Leon companion, new companion?
Helena.
Helena,
Helena,
yeah.
sorry,
Yeah, Helena, yeah.
Like her, I thought her backstory was kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, it was.
You know what I mean? It was far more interesting than some of the other companions that you've had in previous games, you know. But in terms of the overall storytelling, I just thought it was pretty good, and it made you want to play the game forward and going forward. And I think that's what I enjoyed about it, because you did get a lot of bang for your buck with the overlapping stories. Like you say, the crescendo was Chris's. Like for me, I think Chris, as much as it irks me, he is the alpha male of Red.
Yeah.
Because they chose to close it with him.
Yeah.
You know, the emotional punch was with him. So that's like, you know, your end scene is Witch Tower.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like, and you think of the follow-up Resident Evil.
Yeah.
It's constantly there.
Yeah.
Definitely with this one, I know say right, the original say Resident Evil 1 because you were new to it, the replayability because you wanted to play it and play it because it took that long to figure out what was what. And as the games went on, I probably myself obviously played them, but probably not as much. But see, Sick, I think there's probably more replayability in Sick than there has been previous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think? Because
Yeah,
even though
there
you
is,
can play,
yeah.
you can obviously with the point system and the whole lot, each
Well,
scenario with each
there's a lot
character, I think there's a lot
more. There's a lot more upgrade features and unlockables in that game. Like
Yeah.
it is very
It made you
crazy.
want to play to get them all. So
Yeah.
Was
I
that
think
game-
there definitely was a lot more replayability in this one
Yeah.
than any of the other ones.
was that game 1 or 2 dead?
Just the one.
It was just the one.
It's a miracle that.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah, it was
one.
crazy, and especially on the PS3 as well back
And
then.
that's what I'm thinking on the
Yeah.
PS3. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But that was the advantage of the Blu-ray disc, right? Because do you remember Xbox didn't go
Yeah.
Blu-ray, wasn't it? Isn't that was the big
No.
thing?
Yeah.
Blu-ray disc. But then
Yeah.
again, it would have been on Xbox too. So somehow they crammed it all into that disc
Yeah.
as well. But you wonder then as well how much of it was from the disc and then additional download as well.
Yeah,
you
so
know,
that
you know
too,
this day and
that too.
age, you put the disc into the console and it's like, oh, you've got a 60 gigabyte update. It's like,
Yeah, it's the same.
Christ,
It's same even with, like Resident Evil 7. I bought the gold edition there about 2 or 3 years ago, and it had 95% of all of the content literally on the disc. But the last 5%, it was the Chris's spin-off campaign that you could only get through a digital download, and you needed to download that then if you wanted to play it with the game, like, you know. So I didn't have it on the gold edition, but then again the download was free, so I suppose I could see the
Right.
method to the madness. Like, yeah, it's kind
Is
of
there
crazy.
Any other topics you want to discuss?
The only thing I would say is some of the enemies got a bit repetitive. That was the only thing I found. I don't know if that was a space issue and they were trying to, you know, when you were coming across, like, you're infected, like when you would play Jake's or Chris's, obviously they're like Las Plagas variants, but they were just all the same. I felt like they were reskins in some way.
Because in some elements with Leon's campaign, you at the start, you had zombies, but then Chris's campaign had, like you said, you had Las Plagas, and the same. Jake's was kind of a mix of the both. You had both elements in Jake and Sherry's campaign. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, when you're talking, Mark, you're talking specifically about how their appearance, is it?
It was more their appearance and like just everything. Their movement was all the same. Like when you were coming,
okay, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was like you were fighting. I understand, like, obviously if it's the same virus across, they're obviously probably all going to be the same.
Yeah.
But it just felt like you were fighting the same end. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, just to get to the other one. Whereas, like, even when you played the old Res, when you played zombies and stuff, even though there were zombies, you still kind of feared the zombies. Whereas these guys, not so much. You were just like, I'll just roundhouse this, do this to this guy, and drop it on. You were only really saving your ammo for the big bosses down.
Yeah, there was quite like if I remember correctly, there's quite a lot of weapons. Was there a Magnum in it called the Elephant Killer? Was it that one?
Sure.
I have no idea. I can't remember.
I'm trying to remember. I know there was like big ass Magnum. Yeah, it's
remember.
oh yeah, there was, yeah, and it was known as the Elephant Killer, and it was basically like the lightning hook.
It's massive.
It's very
like-
hairy.
It literally looks like Barry Burton's gun.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. I'm just looking at it now. It's like, you know, when you play Resident Evil, the remake that would have been on the GameCube.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Barry.
Yeah,
Burton's
yeah,
gun.
yeah. You're right. Yeah, and that cutscene.
Yeah, because it has that unique sort of barrel to it. It's like almost square. That's
Yeah.
I
See, the fact that there was 4 campaigns and then, you know, each one had different weapons across them all.
Yeah.
Certain campaigns had quite a lot. You know.
was it Ada had the mine launcher.
I'm trying to remember it. I think she did.
Because I remember she had a gun that I remember picking it up, killed myself 2 times trying to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
It's even getting me thinking, what? I'm going to have to.
Well, they're all on sale at the minute on the PlayStation Store.
I've got them all.
I have them anyway.
Have you got them?
Yeah, I have them
I've
as
got
well.
them all.
I have them
We'll
anyway.
have to arrange a time to play some co-op.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
have them anyway.
I'd love to
Yeah,
play
it
through
was
them all
the,
again.
it was the Mind Thrower Ada. So it was.
Right.
Oh no, it was character exclusive for Leon. I thought it was
Right? Mine.
You probably used Timothy Rex.
70 right. Yeah.
I'd say that was probably the Capcom's closest throwback to Dino Crisis that you'll ever get. In
I was
fairness,
thinking that.
yeah.
Literally, when I saw it, I was thinking, "This is now."
Yeah.
But it was that was the only thing. It was like the one thing I thought was kind of cool. Is there a bit where you're on top of a roof? There's all the zombies below you, the last roof, or am I?
Yeah, there was. Yeah,
There is,
yeah.
yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
thought that bit was freaky because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and the way the cloud was going through the city and all that was cool.
Yeah, I thought
For the
that was
story,
pretty
you know?
cool as well. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have anything else we want to talk about on Resident Evil 6, or shall we move on?
I think they have everything. It's a good game. Obviously, not to everybody's liking, but I enjoyed it. And listening to yous that yous are the same. Yous enjoyed it too. So
Yeah, like for what it is, it's good, and for what it tries to do, it is good. You know, kind of, even though it does move away from it, but like
Do you
you know
think
yourself with future games, like, at least it kind of drew itself back into what it was supposed to be like. So
Do you think there's an argument that they crammed too much into it instead of focusing on one style?
there's a possibility of that. You know,
Like I say, I think you could have had Jake and Sherry in it, but not
yeah, they were ambitious. They were
Yeah.
definitely ambitious. Yeah,
as you said the last episode, Dick. If you didn't have Umbrella in that, you could easily make that another game and people.
Yeah, just another shooter game. Yeah.
Just another shooter game with zombies, people would love it because the Resident Evil fans expect survival horror, and we all want to have that, like, you know, fear when you walk down the corridor and checking how many bullets you have in your gun.
Yeah.
When you go to a thing where you're picking up a mine launcher and you're clearing a hallway in 2 seconds, you're sort of
yeah. I still think though the main, like, even though like it is a decent game in its own right, but I think it was definitely more of a focus with Capcom to still compete even more so with Resident Evil 6 than 5, with the likes of the action focused elements seen like with Call of Duty and that. I think that was definitely the main focus of Resident Evil 6, you know, because I think even though Resident Evil 6 did sell well, but in terms of Capcom, because I remember Capcom actually they considered it a failure because it underperformed. It didn't sell the numbers that they had anticipated.
Which,
So
number 6?
Yeah, number 6. Yeah,
But-
yeah. They were
but I think
they were
that
expecting
could
it
be
to sell a
down
lot
to-
more than what
Well,
it did.
Yeah, but if you think about, like, did you mention that there was over 500 developers in this?
There was over 600 developers. We see
Oh,
they were
600.
they were expecting
Yeah,
it to.
The
they
cost
were
of that
expect-
game.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
make
Yeah,
it was
They all had to be
probably
paid
Yeah,
$10.
but they were expect. See, I remember it was one of the Call of Duties that came out that year, and the sales that it made was crazy. And they were looking to sell at least 11 million copies, and I think it only during the first couple of weeks it only sold like 7 million. Which to be honest, when you think about it, it was nuts. It was incredible. Yeah. But it still wasn't. See, they were expecting to be on Call of Duty level in terms of sales. You know, and I think that was what was wrong. I think I think they got into their mind to think that they could compete with Call of Duty and use like Resident Evil to do that. But I think for a long time they were reluctant to want to change. It wasn't, because they were stubborn in their ways. I think they didn't want to really kind of relinquish the fact that they could take some of that element from the likes of the success of Call of Duty. And I think that's when the likes a couple of years later, when the likes of a lot of indie games started to come out. And I remember even with the likes of the PT demo to come out on the PS4 from Konami, that was when things started to shift and change again, where a lot of indie games started to take a lot of, because you've seen the amount of indie games that come out that all copied that PT demo. And I think that's when Capcom realised, you know what, we need to kind of delve back into this. And I think that's when they started working on Resident Evil 7. I think they realised then that, you know, we need to drastically change, because they were the best at what they did in their market, and trying to take a piece of someone else's isn't always the best way to go, even though there is potential to earn more money. But there's no guarantees, you know, because like Activision were the best at what they did, Capcom were the best at what they did. Like, in terms of success, you're better to sustain your lane in that kind of way, you know.
If you've got a successful niche,
Yeah.
and it's what you're known for.
Stick to that one thing. And I think they realise that now, you know. But again, it's like everything else. Companies evolve, like your ideas evolve over time, and eventually you kind of, I think see, the funny thing is, with the likes of those generations of consoles from the PS2 to the PS3, there was still a lot of experimentation going on, and I think a lot of them wanted to kind of try different things. But the fact is, online gaming was new and was relatively new. It was becoming quite popular. I think that's when a lot of those companies decided to dive in it. Like, when you look at the likes of FPS games, while there was some really good FPS games on the likes of the PS2, But if you remember, the control systems on the PS2 were terrible in terms of FPS shooters. They were really clunky and they were very, very hard to use. That's why you'd always nearly want to play the PC equivalent instead of playing the console versions. But it wasn't until the PS3 where they actually did manage to perfect the control systems and controls for FPS shooters and even third-person shooters, where it was more streamlined and focused in that kind of way. Because like even though when you look at like even Resident Evil 4 on the PS2, like you had 2 analog sticks, but you could only use one for aiming and to interact. You couldn't use the other one really as such. It was you had to do everything with the one analog stick, which was silly. Whereas now you literally use every button on the controller now with modern games. So
Yeah, the other analog stick was the controller camera, wasn't it?
yeah, pretty
But
much.
that was because of the GameCube.
Yeah.
The game, we talked in the last episode
Yeah.
of GameCube. It
Yeah.
wasn't really an analog stick on that
No.
controller. It was more of a D-pad again.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, for me, they still hadn't perfected control elements with consoles back then. It was really in the PS3 that they really started to nail that, you know. So yeah.
So I was just looking. I looked up the amount of units sold in all the Resident Evil games. Like when you say like Resident Evil 6, I remember them saying like, "Oh, it underperformed." It
Yeah.
sold the same amount of copies as Resident Evil 5 as of December of last year.
Yeah,
So that kind of proves to you that the development was way too big, wasn't it? Really.
yeah.
So the profits weren't as big. So that's why it underperformed.
Yeah. I think they were probably a bit overly ambitious with 6, but I suppose it's like they had to try.
Yeah.
You had to try something, but at least they realised that they learned kind of just better to focus on what we are actually good at.
Well, you look at Resident Evil Village, right? Like Resident Evil Village is the most current Resident Evil game, right? And it only sold 7.4 million copies, and that was at the end of December. So I'd say the gold edition now has kind of spiked that up a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's quite underperforming if you think about it as well. That's over 1 million less than Resident 5.
Yeah.
You know?
Why do you think that?
Because they went away from survival horror again in parts.
Mm.
It was quite action oriented.
Yeah.
The biggest selling Resident Evil game to date is 7.
Do you think it's in part, obviously, they have gone away from survival horror in certain elements, but do you think it's in part due to the camera style as well, or do you think it's due to, like, maybe some of the original Resident fan base, or like myself?
I think it also has a lot to do with the main character, your man Ethan. While he was a good character in his own right, I don't think people warmed to him the same way as they did with the original characters in the series. I think by the time Resident Evil 8 came along, like 7 was brilliant, don't get me wrong, but I think by the time 8 came along, people didn't really want to be playing as Ethan again. Even though I know they were trying to project their own variation of the story to kind of tidy things up, which is a good idea in its own right. Like, and at least they done an excellent job with it. But I think people didn't want to play as Ethan. They wanted to be more back to like Leon or Chris. Or I know we got to play as Chris, but I think people wanted more of the original character.
Yeah.
and such.
To continue the original story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree to you to an extent, Peter, that people were like, "Oh, give us back our familiar characters," but I disagree that people, I think by the end of Resident Evil Village, people were like, "Man, I really like it."
Yeah, that's the funny thing is that you got into the game, and especially towards the end, because
he's
at the end,
character
yeah,
in the game,
it is,
you know?
because you felt really, really sad at the end of the game when you seen what happened, like, and that was the first time when, I admit that you kind of got it. It was one of those moments that you really got an idea of the humanity behind the character, you know.
And I thought it was quite good, Veddy, I know you haven't completed Resident 8 or played 7.
I know what happens. You're all good.
All right, okay. Well, the whole point was the sacrifice for his child and all that there. It made him, it gave the most depth to any character, I think.
In fairness, it did,
I think by the end of it, then people were just like, "Oh, shit, man, like, I actually really like this character."
Yeah.
I
think it's like anything else. I think you see a lot of people, I think, just kind of jumped on the bandwagon, and they kind of didn't really see the whole context of it. It's not until, like you said, you sat down and played it and experienced the game that you really kind of like, oh, you know what, this is way better than I thought. That kind of way. So yeah.
Like I think, like, if they'd done Resident Evil 7 and they put an obscure Resident Evil character in that, people probably would have jumped on it a bit more.
Yeah.
Like, instead of Ethan, it was maybe Billy Coen or something like that.
Yeah.
Because that's a tie-in then to the original games, For me, I just didn't jump on it initially because I wasn't sure that there was any connection. I didn't know if this because people were saying in the early days that it's like a rebrand or a refresh universe.
That's originally what I thought it was as well. When it first came out. Especially with 7. That's originally what I thought.
In 7 it mentions Raccoon City, like the incident. In a newspaper article you find, right, the Baker House.
So, the only thing say it took me a while to want to play 7. I do remember playing that demo. It was at the beginning or the kitchen. That was brilliant. That was one of the scariest demos I've ever played. That was just incredible how well that was done. And the fact is, the build up to it was very like what they done with the PT demo, but then to transition it into the actual game, like what Capcom did there was absolute genius. That was a perfect transition, and I don't think that, and that even to this day, no other company has ever done that and done it that well. And the thing is, they didn't really do it with 8, which is a pity. I think that I would have liked to have seen them do it with 8. I'd know if there is a Resident Evil 9, I'd love to see them do something like that with 9. They kind of have that kind of build up to it, They did kind of try to do it with the Resident Evil 2 remake. I remember they brought out when Resident Evil 3 was getting closer to release, they re-released another demo that a portion when you were in the courtyard of the RPD, you could hear a Nemesis in the background. You can hear him roaring. I do remember that they did. I think they got that idea obviously from the kitchen demo with Resident Evil 7. They realised that they could throw in little Easter eggs and give people kind of like, and that I think they need to do more of, because they didn't really do it with 8, so they didn't, and they are very good at that. So yeah.
I think we've unofficially segued onto Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
well, it was going that way anyway. So
it was coming that way. That was actually a really nice smooth transition into the Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I wanted to just kind of like comment as well about that kitchen demo.
Yeah, because it was brilliant.
When they announced Resident Evil 7, I really had no idea it was even in development. And I remember, I think it was one of the E3s, wasn't it? It was announced, and it had that real catchy song and the cinematics and all that. And I was like, it was announced that it was going to be first person, and I was like, no.
I know.
I was like, no, that's it. Never buying the game. Not interested. Don't show me any more trailers. Don't do not. And then the kitchen demo came on the store. Prior to the game's release, and I said, feck it, I'll have a go. And I swear to God, I was like, right, I hate the first person viewpoint, but this true Resident Evil, the puzzles, everything was just, I felt like I was back in Resident Evil 1, and I thought, this is so scary and creepy. And you're right, like I think what kind of like pointed them in the direction of the first person was the success of them.
It pointed them in the right direction.
Crazy for that. If you had that installed on your console, they took it off the store. You could sell your console on eBay with the demo on it, and it would get ridiculous money.
Seen one going the other day for 10,000.
Oh, wait, did I delete mine?
I know, me too.
I deleted mine. But the funny thing is, I was the same, and I think many of us were the same. We were kind of in that, like, no, it's not Resident Evil and this and that. And the demo of that kitchen demo definitely got me warmed up to it, because I seen how good it was, and it was so scary. I was like, I can't believe that they're doing this in the demo. And the fact is, it's different from the original game, because that segment that's in the demo isn't actually in the game itself. Kind of way.
Well, it is. You go into that house.
Well, it is to a degree, but it's changed a little bit, And
you still have the room with the TV and the VHS tape.
Now, even after playing that demo, it still took me a good 2.5, maybe 3 years to sit down and fully play the game. I played because I got the gold edition, and that's when I said, right. But I remember your man.
We all know with the Steve-O.
Yeah, but I remember your man, what's his name, Jack Baker. I remember him following me around the place. It was kind of remind me of the Tyrant. And I remember he scared the crap out of me. And I remember going into the save room, and I turned the game off, and I didn't play it then for about a year. And but then when I did get back into it, I said, you know what, to hell with this. I'm going to give it a go. And actually, the funny thing is, I'd actually played Resident Evil 2. I went back into it after I played the Resident Evil 2 remake.
Yeah, same for me.
Yeah, and I says, you know what, I'm going to give it a go this time and see how I get on. Because I enjoyed Resident Evil 2 that much. It's like, you know what, this game is definitely worthy of a go. And, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, I was so blown away by it. But even in saying that, I found that by playing it, I had a newfound respect for it. And even when I went in to play Resident Evil 8 Village, I found I actually enjoyed it as well. But I will admit, I think 7's the better game. 7 is definitely the darker and slower paced game. It's definitely...
Well, it's a true Resident Evil game.
Yeah, it's a true Resident Evil game. The only bit I didn't like, the only thing I did not like about the game was how they portrayed Chris in it. In the DLC, he looked totally different. But I know that was always the debate and the argument that they had online. But at least they rectified that with 8. They brought him back to his kind of what he looked like in the, like, say, 5, 6 and that, which is really cool.
Kind of the hulking character.
Yeah. I to be honest, I found even just before I finish up, with me doing all the stuff on my own channels, remember those videos I created there recently on the how the PlayStation revolutionized survival horror? Even I'm currently working. I'm going to have it out in the next couple of weeks. I have a wee documentary video of how Capcom, pretty much relating to what we're talking about here, of how Capcom dominated survival horror, and I kind of go into that where it kind of does all the transition, because I done a load of research. I spent months doing it. I was working on those videos for the last 6 to 8 months with regards to that, my channels, and even that new channel I set up a couple of weeks ago, and I found it wasn't until then I actually copped on that I didn't realise, by spending weeks doing research and trying to figure out stuff so that I could write scripts for my videos, that I realised that Capcom had originally tried to make Resident Evil a first-person horror game way back in the early days of the PlayStation.
Oh yeah.
But they had too many ideas that they couldn't really put it all together on the PlayStation because of the hardware limitation. And that's when they were a few months into the development, and Shinji Mikami, he ended up playing Alone in the Dark, the first Alone in the Dark on the PC, and that's when he had the light bulb moment. We need to change the direction of where this is going. So that's where Resident Evil ended up becoming like the original Alone in the Dark with the fixed cameras, and the whole lot. So it literally took us massive inspiration from Alone in the Dark, but it originally was supposed to be a first-person game. But in saying that, from all of that, and then going back and then talking about Resident Evil 7 and 8, I realise now, understanding the original roots, I have a whole new respect for the franchise, even more so now because of what it was supposed to be and what it could have been. Now, it's not to say that I don't enjoy the originals. My favourites are the fixed cameras. That's my favourite style of those type of games, hands down. But at the same time, I think it is pretty cool, because I remember even there was, like, if you look at other kind of spin-off games that were on the PS1, I have played a few. Remember that one I used to have as well, Hell Knight? Now, you couldn't do any combat, but you were running away from that enemy the whole time that was always chasing you. That would have been, I'd imagine, what Resident Evil would have kind of looked like if it had been in first person in the PS1, in that kind of way, to some degree, where it was very dark, very atmospheric, and like you did play that Hell Knight game before as well when I had it, and that was one creepy ass game. So it really was, like, it was it was very, very creepy. But yeah, I have to say now, yeah, I can't fault Resident Evil 7. Like, when I think about it, it definitely is one of the best of these type of games in that modern generation. If anything, it's funny when you look at the likes of all of those games. Like, Resident Evil 1 set the standard of horror game, or the survival horror genre. It solidified the genre as its own individual genre. Then Resident Evil 4 came along. It set up the standard for the over-the-shoulder action. Actually, every action game pretty much you see today is inspired by Resident Evil 4. But then, right, obviously the PT demo came out, but that never really became a thing. But that's where Capcom realised, right? I know there was a load of other indie games that came out. It was like Amnesia and it was Outlast. They done a good job. But Resident Evil 7 really brought that to a whole new level. So it did. And they were the ones, I think, that perfected that element of it as well. So for each of those type of iterations, they nailed it on the first attempt, when you really think about it. And that's why I think they really are the masters of survival horror, really. Kind of way when you think about it, like, yeah.
So Steve-O, you're the man that kind of kicked off this whole Resident Evil 7 thing, because you played it way before all of us, and even though we played the kitchen demo, I was still stubborn enough to say, no, not Resident Evil to me, I want to play it in third person. But you played it, you were like, you kept on at us. I think, the game came out in 2017, right? So
2017, yeah.
Maybe?
Oh, you played it, yeah.
The game was well out. Yeah, it was well out at that point. I think, in fact, I think maybe Resident Evil 3 remake by the time I played 7, possibly.
I think you could be right. It was I would say a good few years after.
Yeah.
It was released before you played it.
You begged me. Well, you didn't really beg me. You just said, you got to give it a try. You got to give it a try. And I eventually, I think, wasn't it free with the, it was part of that PlayStation Plus Essential
PlayStation
collection?
Plus, yeah, it was.
Yeah. So I got it, and once you got into the, you understood, like, right, I'm going to give it a try. It's first person. I don't like first person, but I'll give it a go. And then you end up just saying to yourself, wow, this really is now absolutely phenomenal. It's like, for me, it's the closest experience I've had in a Resident Evil game, Resident 1. In terms of, like, the look. You could be walking down a corridor in the Baker house, and you could say to yourself, this could be the Spencer Mansion. It just looks like. And the colour tones and everything were very much like Resident 1. The only gripe I had with this game, other than first person, the lack of, like, variety of enemies. You tend to just fight the same friggin' enemies all the time. Those kind of black, liquid, gooey kind of
mold
enemies.
type enemies.
Yeah, the mold, yeah.
You were limited to the enemy. That's the only downside. But listen to what you were saying. I played the kitchen demo, and I was exact same as yourself, first person. Oh, no. But I did enjoy it because it just had that survival horror atmosphere. I'm going, it's back.
Yeah.
but the first person view just didn't do it. But
Yeah.
because I bought the PSVR, I have to buy Resident Evil 7. So I bought it. More or less, I kind of bought because I knew Resident Evil 7 was VR compatible. That was more or less the reason why I bought it.
Yeah, just something to play.
Yeah, because I wanted to try it in VR to see what it was like. Other than that,
Yeah.
I probably mightn't have bought it, that's being honest, but VR definitely. And the likes of yourselves there, what you were saying, oh no, first person, no, definitely not. But see, when I played it, I actually didn't play it without the VR. I played it VR first. And playing it in VR, the controls, yeah, it took a while to get used to, but I did get used to them. Like, when you wanted to move, you had to press
Yeah,
it. If I
'cause
wanted to
it's-
turn left, I had
Yeah,
to
because it was more
press
incremental,
left.
wasn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. When
Yeah.
I wanted to move louder, I keep pressing left, keep pressing. But eventually I got used to it. But see, playing at VR, oh, I never look back. I really didn't. I said, boys, I'm playing at VR, but even without the VR, you just have to play it. The survival horror element, it was back. As you said there, Diggs, it took you back to Resident Evil 1.
It did, yeah. It's
know.
actually the closest experience to Resident Evil
The
1 for me.
creepy vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just had everything, you know.
And you know what? It's the first Resident Evil game that I can say that the voice act, power, motion capture is power.
Yeah.
It was real, like step up, wasn't it? To modern kind of like AAA budget game.
Yeah.
And the voice actors call him Jack Baker. Phenomenal.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Marguerite Baker, freaky boy.
Oh, she
But,
was.
yeah, like and even Mia was really good. And you know, Mark, you
Lucas,
haven't.
the son,
but-
he was just
Yeah,
nuts.
yeah, he's just
You know what I
that
mean?
was just text. I mean, yeah, it had vibes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So basically,
It did.
the-
It did.
the plot is that Ethan Winters gets like a message from his wife saying,
Yeah,
you
she
know,
was missing for years,
Yeah.
and you get this
yeah,
anonymous
then
message.
that she's still alive. So he goes to Louisiana to look for her, where she's been sort of like babysitting for this family, but. It's sort of like Texas Chainsaw vibe. They're nuts. Because everybody, I'm sure Eddie, you saw it too. That footage of them all sitting around the table with the rotten meat on the table, and he
Making
cuts.
them eat it.
He cuts the
Flies and everything.
he cuts Lucas's hand off. He's not eating it yet. You know, like that's where the game really starts from, right? It starts from that point where they piss off, and then you end up just trying to navigate your way out of the situation. But it is genuinely terrifying, even when Jack Baker starts stuck and you're hiding. And I think that's why, you know, the first pair, like, I always think to myself, you know, the way Village got a third person patch, and you could play it now in third. They couldn't do it with Village, or not Village, 7. Because it uses the first person viewpoint as part of the core puzzles and mechanics, you know, that you need it. You absolutely need it throughout the game.
Because I was going to actually ask you that thing, if they brought it out in third person still work.
No,
But you know,
there's certain elements in the game that, you know, maybe they could have a thing where they keep it in first person part, but it's design's done. But the doesn't it scream Silent Hill 2 vibes? Guy goes to a location to look for his missing wife. Yeah, we've seen that before, right? But it's crazy. You know, Eddie, you haven't played this at all, right?
played like 5.
Right. So, but you never got to the part where you meet Mia.
I have, and she bites you. That's
Yeah, where she
And
goes
she
up the
just-
stairs and all that.
Yeah,
That's like the ringing grudge element.
dude. That's why I was like, right, I'm off to bed. See you later.
Don't I kind of love. See at the very start where you pull up in the car and you're
Yeah.
going through, say, fields or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden in the distance you see Jack, but at this stage you didn't know who he was. And then you go forward and then all of a sudden he disappears and go, yes, we've got horror on our hands, now we're back. And then you go into the house and you look around, oh crap. And you're just waiting. You know that he's there, but you're just going, where is he going to fucking come from?
Yeah.
You know?
It's
And then-
it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Like,
you didn't realise that there was other members of the family there as well. And then as the story progresses, you'll know, but there's an old woman then sitting on a wheelchair that does fucking nothing. You're going, why is she there? And then all of a sudden you go into a different room and she's there again. You go, what? Going, oh, hold on a minute, what the hell is going on here? Something. You knew she'd something to do with the story, but you just didn't know it until the story progressed.
Yeah.
But
There's one thing I've learned in zombie films or games is you never turn your back watching The Last of Us. That's
see, even I loved about it because I was the first one to say us play it, and I did keep on with the boys to get it. So you have to give it a try, whether you like it or you don't. Just try it.
give it a go. Yeah.
Yeah, just try it. Because I played it, but I played it just in VR only. And I loved it. And the elements of survival horror, say, were back. Loved it. And then the likes of Jack, and he's constantly going around the house searching for you. It's like, oh, yeah, basically incapacitate him like you did with Mr. X or the Nemesis, and then you run. But even the puzzle, everything from the original as it came back. And the puzzles were decent because some puzzles, you could figure them out. Other ones, you had to use the environment around you to actually solve the puzzle, whether it be the lighting settings or there was different things you needed to do solid points of going, yeah, it brought the whole element of Resident Evil back, which I totally enjoyed. Now, the character Ethan, you're going, right, what's the story with this one? We're so used to Chris, Leon, Jill, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden gone off the beaten track here with somebody completely different. But it didn't deter me off. I said, I'm going to give it a go and I'm going to try it. And I have to say, even the story as it was on, but obviously you have to play it yourself. Smeets, Diggy, you've done it. Mark, I would definitely recommend you give it.
Yeah,
you won't be disappointed, honestly. I know the first person element of it is putting you off.
Well, it's on my bucket list of games to play. Like I have a friend in Liverpool, his name Chuck, and he sent me a video of basically him playing in VR. Is there a fight where you have with Jack pool table or something? Or
There's an area that you're in where there's a pool table, and you have to kind of hide from.
Yeah, well, he sent me a video, and it's basically his mic is picking up stress. He's like, "Oh, mate, Jesus Christ, mate, leave me alone." And he's playing it on VR, and you can see his head whipping around every time he's looking for Jack. And it's pure panic, and I was sitting there going, maybe I should.
You know what, that's exactly the way I was like when I was playing the VR too. You're trying to hide, and he's coming looking for you, and you're going, oh no. And you're basically the kind of same thing as your friend was doing, you know.
Oh yeah, it's
a wee bit too much for me, VR.
It is, because he says after like 40 minutes of it, he says, "Mate, me bloody neck was killing me, mate. I had to take that VR off, you know." He said, because he was whipping his head around that much, and says it just, he says Jack freaked him. That wee clip he did send me of him, he was running around the pool table because he didn't know what to do. He just says, "I need to keep the pool table between me and him so I can figure out what I'm going to do." But here, like, obviously, like, I haven't played 7. What's the deal with the molded? Is it a virus? What is it? Explain.
Yeah.
Everybody's infected. The Baker family are infected. Obviously, I'm not 100% sure. The molded, they're infected, I think, with the same virus with the Baker family, but obviously it just mutated into something else, as far as I can remember.
Well, it starts with the ship, right? Because you know the section you go to that ship.
Yeah.
So that's where Evelyn's on that ship, and it ends up crashing, right? And it crashes near where the baker's house is, and that's how they ended up, like, with her, you know, her being there, and she infected the rest, basically, the mold. So the mold is sort of like, it's tied in with Umbrella or Spencer, if I remember correctly. You find that out in the Asian village that the mold virus, I could be wrong on this, but the mold virus is something that Spencer was always interested.
So is this a virus that Umbrella made, or is it like the last
No, this
naturally
is
occurring?
it's a naturally occurring type thing. Yeah, you actually go, like, there's a part in 7, 8, and you're sort of seeing, like, the root, isn't it? The best way.
Well, in 8, because 8 is actually like in the village. That's where, like, the mold originated from, I think.
That's what I mean. Yeah. You go into it, and you just see this massive mold, and you're like, shit. But that's kind of where it all kind of comes, you know. But
So in a way, do you feel like 7 was like a soft reboot then? Because you had 4 was sort of like a soft reboot for Resident Evil, bringing in the new control system and this new enemy, a new virus. Would you say 7 was akin to the new generation going forward?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there was a soft reboot where they were diverting from the old law, hoping to go in a new direction. It's the same thing. Like 5 did the same thing. It ended back element Resident, probably because of backlash, you know. That was probably it. There was probably a backlash in 7 where it was like, well, this is nothing to do with Resident Evil, so why is it called Resident Evil?
Yeah.
Because there's literally nothing there other than the part at the end with Chris.
Yeah.
But yeah, that confused me. He's wearing an umbrella patch.
It's not umbrella. It's like it's blue instead of red. Is that right, Steve-O?
Yeah, it is blue.
Yeah, they're not actually umbrella.
Umbrella.
It's like an anti-umbrella.
Right. So Chris is no longer a BSA.
No,
I don't think so.
No, he's not.
Right.
No,
Got it.
he's kind of gone rogue. He set up his own organization now. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, you should definitely do it. Give it a go. Play it on the easiest difficulty just to get it in there, and you won't regret it. Some of the set pieces in it, like when you're fighting Marguerite, when you go to that house, I can't remember the name of the house in it, but it's basically like Texas Chainsaw. You're like in the Everglades, you go on a boat and you go to this other area, that kind of thing. But the fight with Marguerite is unreal, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, it's mental.
Creepy
Like, you
as
can
hell.
still use weapons and all this. You still do everything that you can do in Resident Evil. The rest, it's just, with this one, it's just first person.
You see, the first person wasn't the total kicker for me, and it
I
was
thought
more
it was.
like it was part of the kicker, but
Is it
wasn't
because it's a different character and it's kind of gone off the beaten track?
No, it was more the point of when I read the initial reviews, no plot threads from the original, and I was like, I really want to see what's going on after. You know what I mean? That was more what I was interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't jump on it.
I think, you're right there. I'll agree with you. It did go off the track, you know what I mean? It was derailed because it just went what we know of Resident Evil just to something completely different. Like, who is Ethan? Like, where did he come from? It was never mentioned before.
So yeah, because there was no follow up. Like you're right after 6 as to what happened with the characters as such. Then that was literally it. Like there was a couple of years then of a jump, and then there was nothing, and then all of a sudden all this starts then, and you're under, and you're kind of left wondering what has happened in between that time. We've no news or any kind of ideas or anything.
That's why I thought it was a complete reboot, because there was not really any mention of Umbrella. It was like a creepy house. Like, are we going back to square one? And that's why I didn't jump on it really back, because I've invested my whole childhood basically.
Yeah. I think I would have been, to be honest with you, I think I was more or less in the same thinking as you, and that's probably why I say that I didn't play because it was first of all. I think I'd have to agree that the elements that have diverted Umbrella, zombies, everything.
I do agree with that as well. Yeah, because like you said, the fact is that even the magazines weren't giving you the whole idea of it. They weren't telling you whether it was actually a direct sequel. They weren't telling you if it was a full-on reboot. There was no in between with it. There was nothing. They don't even think they knew themselves what it was at the time when it was released. And I think this was the whole problem. So I think it just caused massive confusion amongst fans, because people didn't really know what is it, what isn't, what's supposed to be, what it's not supposed to be. And I think that's what threw a lot of people off, even for me as well, because I didn't really know what it was. So that's why I kind of was a bit reluctant for a while.
I definitely agree with you, Veddy. The fact is that you said that the same, it kind of went off the beaten track to Resident Evil. Now, for myself, but with most games, I don't be looking at or reading books or going on the internet to check to see what the game's actually like. Obviously, with Resident Evil 7, seen a little bit about Ethan, and I was going, what's the story with this? But the fact is that it was a Resident Evil game, and the fact I had the VR and I knew that it was VR compatible, I says, I'm definitely giving this a go. It's Resident Evil. I'm hoping that it's going to scare the Jesus out of me. And do it.
That it did.
It did.
Bloody well did, yeah.
No, I have it on my library. Bucket list of games.
I have to say, the character Jack is deadly. I have to say, deadly.
And the voice acting is great on his character too.
Well, anything I've ever seen of Jack, voice, and like I say, it does give like that old school B movie.
Yeah, he is one of the scariest characters. Yeah.
How did you played with it, Freddie? How far did you get it?
I was literally after she attacked me. I think don't I get my hand cut off or something?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I was like, right. I didn't like the way she crept up the hall, because I did not like the girl from the ring.
Yeah,
exactly.
Very much that.
Yeah.
Oh, wait until you play it and you fight Marguerite.
And even say other encounters you have with Jack.
Yeah. Even in the garage, that was pretty
deadly.
epic actually.
I thought that was deadly. It's very intense. Definitely is. Without giving too much away.
When you go into the abandoned ship, like that's freak when you're on there. That's real, like unnerving when you go to the abandoned ship where Evelyn was on, and you're sort of getting flashbacks to find out what actually happened there. And it's just go back.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say about.
Go ahead.
Chuckle Brothers, to me, to you.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say just one thing. It's going back to survival horror to Resident Evil 7. Yeah, it was back to survival horror. Back to puzzles. Back to the enemies. Back to that creepiness feeling, and also then
the formula.
Yeah, it had everything, and then even in the game,
isolated.
Yeah, you had choices to make in the game. Do like of the other old Resident Evils, you had that in it as well.
Yeah.
Once you get further on in the game, you had choices to make that change the story going forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's something for you.
And do you know what I loved? Some of the puzzles, like there was puzzles that were optional.
Yeah.
Oh right, okay.
That led you to get like a better weapon like that.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
The one interesting thing, like just when I think about it, like even though like Ethan, what happened to him, and even with going on to like Resident Evil 8, how he was affected with the mold himself, and that's what kept him kind of alive. But it's funny how he never changed his personality traits. Like most other characters, when they're infected with something, it affects them in some way to a point that it affects their personality, affects like everything about them. But with him, it didn't. He was still grounded in who he was, and it seemed to be that he was immune to that element, that side effect of it. which is interesting in its own right. Like, so,
It is.
yeah.
But like, just a question I'd ask you: with the remakes we have come, and they're going back to pretty much the Resident Evil 4, a reimagine going on there. Do you think there's a future for Resident Evil 9 to be first person, or do you think they will adapt the remake?
I don't know.
Part of me thinks that this, with the amount of remakes we've had so far, and the fact that they've chosen not to do Code Veronica, but they're doing like 2, 3, and 4. What's going to happen? Are they going to announce that we'll forget about 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and we're just going to continue on from 4, or we're just going to remake 4 and that's
Yeah.
Being honest, in just my opinion, I honestly think there will be a Resident Evil 9, but just like my opinion, I don't think it'll be first person. I think it'll go back old school shoulder look. That's just my opinion.
I would agree, actually, yeah.
Geez, that's
I
what I
think
was
that's what it'll be.
getting at there.
I think in the modern, with the way modern games I think are made, especially with like how good Resident Evil 2 is, and the way looking at the way Resident Evil 4 is, like I've heard nothing but great things about it. I'd imagine that I think they found their kind of niche in terms of way it's supposed to be. Like first person is really good, but I think it the over the shoulder definitely seems to be more popular, so it does.
So do you think then Resident Evil 9, maybe they might chuck in the odd first person sequence in the game as a flashback, but the over the shoulder.
That content would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you have a mixture of both.
To find a balance between the two, I think it would work nicely.
But do you think, like, because Village can be played now in third person or first person, that's how they'll go about developing
They probably might do it that way as well, actually, that makes a lot of sense, actually, because like Village, like, and especially with the fact is they've added all those extras as an add-on, and I'd say that's what it is. It's an experiment to see what they can play with for future entries, so it's interesting. I'd imagine they could do it.
Right. You've played Resident Evil 7, first person. Resident Evil 8, first person, but then you've dropped into third person. Which would you rather, first or third in Resident Evil 8?
I haven't played the third person element of 8 yet.
I would say first, and that's being honest.
Yeah,
because I played it first myself.
Yeah, I think, like, I played it in both perspectives. And I think for me, it's quite noticeable that the game was developed first person in mind, and the third person perspective secondary input, which
definitely.
I just think first person better for it.
I think so, definitely.
Yeah, no, I definitely I loved 7, and I was a bit disappointed then with 8, the fact that I felt like they had a good thing with 7, decided, oh no, let's go back and throw it action again with 8.
That did disappoint me now, in all fairness. I was expecting more of the same from 7, more survival horror puzzles, and it's just
because 8 has
a good game, but
because 8 has a crazy amount of weapons in it, like 4 did. Ridiculous amount of weapons that's in 8.
It's like the Resident Evil curse, isn't it?
Yeah.
They get it.
Survival horror, and then they go
action. That's it.
Is it going to be a case where they'll make one game now survival horror, the next one then action, the next one survival horror, the next one action? Is that like kind of the trend it's going to be?
It seems to be going that way,
Yeah.
Like, if you look at Resident Evil 8, and you know that part where you're going through the after the whole intro, and then you're out and you're walking in the snow and it's night time, and you eventually get to the top of the hill and you see the whole village and the castle in the back. You could be looking at a Castlevania. It screams Castlevania vibe. It just when it was announced that 8 was going, I thought, I just rolled my eyes. But then you say to yourself, well, Resident Evil is zombies. So why are they so anti-zombie at this moment in time? Or is it just because they think, people will get bored as werewolves?
Yeah, because I feel like, see, when you start chucking werewolves and opening the door up to everything, Banshee, Ghost, Wendigo, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're going down through every mythical creature,
And when you think about it, it was Resident Evil 3 was probably the last one. Or say Code Veronica. Was that after Resident Evil? Before? I can't remember which.
Code Veronica was after Resident Evil 3.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Right, so that was probably the last one, say, with zombies. See anything from that? There hasn't been a zombie.
Well,
You know what I mean?
apart from Resident Evil 6 was the first one to go back to zombies.
It wasn't, but were there really zombies like the original?
In the start
and Leon's campaign, there were zombies.
Well, then it's 6, but you look at the gap between that.
Yeah, there was a massive gap.
With 6, and then you've 7 now and 8, and there's another 2 games after that, nothing.
And like 8 was like, as I said to you, when you got to the top of that hill or mountain or whatever, and you saw under this screamed Castlevania, and then you had the werewolves, and then lady, they were kind of portrayed as vampires, Yourself, you have a franchise.
Well, Devil May Cry.
Exactly, and Castlevania. Stick there. You don't need to mix elements game. It's ultimately disappointing. Resident Evil 7 got it right so well. How the hell did Resident fall into that trap of, let's make it after horror again.
Mm.
Don't get me wrong, in Resident Evil 8 you did have House Benevient, which is probably one of the terrifying set in a Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
It's traumatized. It really has. We haven't
actually-
moved on that far yet, but we'll stick with 7 for now.
Yeah. Well, even 7, see the scare element, it was back.
It was,
The
yeah.
Final Horror was back in Resident Evil.
Yeah, you don't know. You're walking in a corridor and you're like, well, what's around that corner there? I don't know. Do I need to keep looking behind as well to see if there's anything coming, or what's behind this door? You actually started to feel like that.
Because I was playing in VR, literally, I was poking my head round the corner just to see. Do I not? That'll tell you it's really good. You got that horror back. Oh no, I don't think I should go there. I think I'll go this way. Definitely.
And the fact that there was a lack of variety in enemy game. Those
It
mode
was a
creatures were
downside,
terrifying.
Yeah, it was a downside, but they were actually good enemies. That kind of a definitely put it up to you, and you're going, oh. And basically, if you didn't kill them, they were coming after you and they'd follow you.
But they were freaky. I remember seeing them and just being terrified and running. I'd be like, nope, not for me.
I go into the next room and it gets up fucking in the next room on top of me. I'm going, I have no ammo, keep running.
And the fact that they can crawl out of those crevice stuff.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, geez. And am I right? I don't know if I could be wrong in saying this, but did they have that kind of Bandersnatch thing where they could grab you and pull themselves towards? Or am I
I think you're right. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah, definitely. I think you're right.
They were freak, and this the slow movement of them. They actually reminded me of the Regenerators in 4, but without the specific need to shoot them in a certain location.
Yeah.
They were terrifying. I think the first one you come across is stuck to the wall, and he just kind of breaks off it. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
could be hiding in the darkness. You won't see them,
Yeah,
but then all of a
yeah.
sudden they're on top of you.
Because you're nearly in the basement when you meet them, isn't it?
The whole of Resident Evil, back to survival horror, everything. But even shooting enemies, even though the enemies say were limited, but the puzzles, and there was stealth in it as well. There were certain parts of the game where there'd be somebody walking around, and you had to go undetected to get to the next area.
Yeah.
You were detected, that was it. You had to start the whole thing again. I mean, it mixed it up.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say I loved about it. It had a bit of everything in it.
The what you call it, the Lucas segment in the game was very kind of like Saw, wasn't it?
It was, wasn't it?
I want to play a game. It was very good. It's all in all, it's definitely in my top 5 time. I love it.
Yeah. Even when I think just with regards to all of the Resident Evil games and series, even with some of the spin-offs, right? Some of the spin-offs weren't that great, but I still enjoyed them for what they were. Kind of way. I haven't really played a fully bad Resident Evil game in a lot of ways. Probably if I was to consider any ones, it would probably where the worst would be that Umbrella Corps and the Operation Raccoon City one that came out in the PS3. Now it did have some unique elements, so it did, but just the combat pieces in that game were terrible. They would probably be the 2 worst of the Resident Evil games I probably have played. But I have never really played a bad one, really, as such. I have enjoyed them all. There's elements in every single one of the games that I've always enjoyed. Even 8 as well. I have to say, there was a lot of elements in 8 that I really, really liked, the more I dived into it. And then even going back to play it again, when you got to learn stuff, because there's things in it that you don't understand quite right the first time. When you go back to play it the second time, and you're like, oh, makes sense now. Kind of. And 7 was the same in a lot of respects to it as well. So, they're good games. They are good games. Really good games in real life.
Your head Smiths and Dig. I wouldn't say I probably did wreck them, but I was at just play it. You have to give it a go.
Yeah.
Very, I'm saying it to you.
Yeah.
Give it
You're
a go.
next. Give
Give it a go. I'm telling you.
That's your homework.
2
That's
boys
your homework.
were disappointed. I'll
That's
tell
my
you,
homework.
definitely give it a
I'll
go.
have to do
But
something.
it's your opinion. You might like it, you might not, but definitely I'll say to you, just give it a go.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I would definitely recommend it too.
Definitely give it a go.
Ahead of Resident Evil 5.
I've got my homework.
You're not allowed back to the next episode until you give us your review on Resident Evil 7.
I come back with a drink problem.
Give it a go, man.
Yeah.
We leave it at there for this episode. We hope, if you listen to this, we hope you really enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. And if you like what you heard, please consider subscribing to our podcast channel on Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube under the Casual Gamers Project. So thanks to Veddy, Peter, and Steve for contributing tonight. And, look out for the next episode on Resident Evil. Good night. Thank you.
Resident Evil 7.